Ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, good morning. I, Tahsina Yasmin, would like to welcome you all to the inauguration ceremony of the symposium titled Modernism, Post-Modernism, Truth, Post-Truth in Language and Literature, organized by the Department of English of Daffodil International University.
This day is full of learn and fun ethics. We'll learn from the veterans of the country and have fun. And I feel it will be a bigger class for whole of DIU. So it is better than a classroom. This is a different experience, exceptional experience we all will have. So please stay put, don't bunk off. With that note, may I very humbly thank our chief guest of honor and our guests from outside, and especially the BUP children. Thank you and welcome.
I hope that you'll stay here with us for the whole day and enjoy the deliberations of the program. It is a very important event for Daffodil International University, Department of English.
It is the timely step and important thinking about English for its present, future, and its importance. At present, what we observe that the condition of English as a whole is deteriorating seriously. Learning of English, spoken English, literature, or teaching is absolutely essential. To cope up with the world communication, which is a very important tool, undoubtedly this communication is English. So we must give special attention to develop this sector. In this symposium, learned speakers will definitely suggest the ways and means about the development and its importance of English. We hope that a positive outcome will definitely come out from the learned speakers.
I think this will be a very fruitful discussion over the whole days, and you will enjoy it. Update yourself, and you will learn new ideas. Interestingly, modern and postmodernism. We will learn quite a lot from you, your contributions, and we will be enriched. Our teachers, students, and we all will be enriched. Love the nature. Love the creations of the Almighty. So this is important. Be that a man or a person or a dog or a plant or everything, but love the nature. With these few words, I want to say you will enjoy your life, rest and relax.
We will try to solve such questions because these were the simple questions, but simplicity is a symbolic term of postmodernism because we have become so much complex over time. There are so many complexities here and there that we are looking for simplicity everywhere. So, day long, we will just keep searching those questions with the help of our dignitaries and very eloquent speakers we have today. And just to focus a few lines on our challenge today to explore is the boundaries of truth, objectivity, and individualism have now really become flexible. As Sir was speaking regarding the rigidity, we have seen in some context, this has become eventually a bit flexible during this time of postmodernism and modernism and post-truth era. Like many others, we, the Department of English here, realize the essence of these changes. And thus, we intend actually to explore that truth and post-truth, the concept of modernism and postmodernism.
It is my immense pleasure that I'm reading the bio of my direct teacher from Ranchi University. So without ado, I'm going to read his bio now. Professor Dr. Muhammad Shohidullah completed his BA Honours and MA degree in English from Ranchi University. He obtained a postgraduate diploma in TEFL from the University of Sydney, Australia in 1987. He completed his MA in ELT from Thames Valley University, London in 1993 and his PhD in English from University of Pune, India. He conducted his postdoctoral research in ELT as a senior Fulbright visiting fellow at Pennsylvania State University in 2008 and 2009. He also received training in English textbook writing at the College of St. Mark and St. John's, Plymouth, England. He started his teaching career as a lecturer in English at Pampton Cadet College, where he taught for a year and 2 months. On March 28, 1983, he joined the Department of English, Ranchi University, as a lecturer and became a professor of English in the year 2000. In September 2000, he joined East West University as a professor of English and was appointed chair of the Department of English at East West University in January 2001 and worked as chair there until December 2004. At the end of 2004, he returned to Ranchi University and continued there as a professor of English until the year 2020. He possesses an illustrious career in research and publication. He has published about 40 research papers in different prestigious national and international journals and a few English textbooks for NCTB. He supervised 12 PhDs, 8 MPhil, and 10 master theses, and currently supervising a few more theses in ELT. He worked as chief editor of Journal of the Faculty of Arts, Journal of the Institute of Bangladesh Studies at Ranchi University. He also worked as project director of Inspire Project. Currently, he is working as the head of the Department of English, Green University, Bangladesh. So this was the brief bio. Sir has many other things that he has achieved, but due to shortage of time, we could not cover it. A big round of applause for Professor Mohammad Shahidullah, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dipti Rahman, first, for reading out my bio and praising me very, very highly. I don't deserve all that. And as a matter of fact, I think this Daffodil University is my third or fourth home. Rajshahi is born in Pabna. Rajshahi is my first home, I should say, because I worked there for a long time. I was a student there. And then Najia Manjur was my student at East West, and Ilyas, your teacher, was my student at East West. So East West was my second home. At the moment, Green is my third home, and Daffodil, I should say, is my fourth home. I know this lady for a long, long time. I visited Daffodil many times and took part in seminars and symposium. Last year also I joined the seminar. Not presented a paper, but panel discussion. I took part in panel discussion last year, etc., etc. So it's my fourth home, I should say. And this morning, I'll not be wasting your time by talking about myself. To be very honest, I'm not really very, very well prepared for a formal presentation. So my presentation will have an informal structure, and it will be rather a talk than a well-written paper. And it will be kind of dispersed meditation, not very well-constructed paper. But my paper will be focused on, we have a high-sounding symposium theme, modernism to postmodernism, then truth to post-truth, very high-sounding and contemporary topic. My focus will be basically on ELT or TESOL, whatever you call it, ELT or TESOL, within this kind of framework. And especially the developments, this kind of developments, and perhaps you know, this time is marked by some key expressions, fashionable words. One of the fashionable, I should say, what is it called? The word, something added before and after, a word? Suffix and prefix, yes, sorry. Forgetting grammar. With my age, becoming older and forgetting grammar. So this suffix and prefix, the prefix post and critical are two of the buzzwords in the present world. If you notice, in the critical world, post is, this prefix is a buzzword, fashionable word, postmodern, post-colonialism, postmodernism, post-humanism, etc., etc. So post is a very popular word in a critical word these days. The other word, very popular buzzword is critical. Critical thinking, critical engagement, critical pedagogy, critical this, critical that. So critical is another fashionable word of the present time. So whatever we talk about, whatever we think about, whatever we write about, this critical and post is an important issue. So this postmodernism and post-truth, modernism to postmodernism, journey from modernism to postmodernism, and truth to post-truth, what do they really deal with? I'm not getting into that, because Najia perhaps will be talking about that. Kaisar Haq sir also will be perhaps talking about that. Kaisar sir will be great to talk on this my issue. I think Samsul Haq sir, and we have my colleague here, Mr. Shamim Mondol, who can talk for hours together on this modernism, postmodernism, truth and post-truth. Because my focus will be basically on ELT. In ELT, we do not use these terms too frequently. But more or less, somehow or other, ELT also is influenced by these ideas like postmodernism, postcolonialism, and truth, post-truth. These theories also influence literature, language, and other areas of study. Philosophy as well, philosophical ideas. But as I say, my discussion will be framed within and focused on language teaching, ELT, and the recent developments in ELT. And I relate postmodernism to, modernism to method Sera. I know those of us who are in ELT, there are two distinct phases. What does it focus on? Objectivity, center, centripetal, centrifugal. Right? Centripetal, everything is directed towards the center. The world has one center, and everything is directed towards that center. And what is the center? London and Washington. England and America is the center of the earth. Jules Verne has a novel. So like that center of the earth is London and Washington. Anglo-American culture and ideas and thoughts developing there, promoted there, and then exported to the rest of the world. So many people use this term consciously and deliberately import and export. Or they develop it and then they export it. Commercial term, remember. To export and import are commercial terms. So they develop there in the West, Central and Western Europe. Most of the ideas in philosophy, in education, in ELT, in literature, develop in the center countries. And then they are promoted or exported wholesale, and we import it uncritically. And you think, what can be best than something importing from the West, London and Washington, right? They are the center of the earth. So we import them, and we swallow them up uncritically. This is a dangerous trend. And this was a trend looking for the best thing, looking for an ideal, looking for objective truth. Truth and post-truth, looking for objective truth. But is there anything you can call objective truth? Truth is objective or truth is subjective? Is there anything objective in the world? Is meaning subjective or objective? These are all important issues of the present world. What is meaning? Where is meaning? Meaning is in language or meaning is in me? You and me. As subject, the way I interpret it is my meaning. We read a text of Shakespeare. What is the objective truth there? What is the objective meaning there? Do we decode the same amount of meaning from Shakespeare? Or our decoded meanings are different from person to person, subject to subject? And there is a theory by M.L. Tiku, a professor, retired professor of the National University of Singapore. And he says investment, input and investment. Learning is the outcome of input and investment. The amount of input and the amount of investment. And in this connection, I feel tempted to quote from Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Dejection and Ode, a few lines. Oh, lady, we receive but what we give. In our life alone does nature live. Does nature have any objective beauty? Wordsworth will say yes. I see it or not, it has an objective beauty. Does Himalaya exist for me? Idealism and realism in philosophy? Himalaya exists. I see it or not. But idealists will say it does not exist unless I see it. So my perception is very, very important. So subject is very important. So in case of meaning, the subject is important. So meaning is subjective or meaning is objective? What I said, truth out there. Is it fixed something? What is truth today will be truth tomorrow also? Was it truth yesterday also? Centuries back it was the truth. Centuries after it will remain the truth. Or with the passage of time, synchronically and diachronically. So synchronic study and diachronic study, if we go across time, what is truth today, what seems good today will remain good tomorrow. For example, if you don't take it otherwise, I'll give you a light example. love affairs. Sorry, popular topic. Today, a boy or girl thinks, I cannot live, survive without this boy or the girl. Tomorrow, a month after, a year after, you might feel that was the worst choice of your life. Right or wrong? So what seems today, right tomorrow, good tomorrow, may seem the worst decision of your life, of my life, your life. That is meaning, that is truth. So all these areas of meaning and truth and objectivity and subjectivity, they are areas of truth and post-truth, modernism and postmodernism. Ideal, search for an ideal. Journey towards an ideal, search for the best, also was a characteristic of modernism. Right? Journey towards the best. Search for the best. So we look for the best things, move forward and look for the best. Nirvana, pursuit of perfection. If you go to Matthew Arnold, right? So pursuit of perfection is our goal, modernism, pursuit of perfection. And we experiment with it. How to attain that, how to reach that, that is the destination, perfection. And then our journey is towards that perfection, right? But are we happy? We are frustrated, right? So the more we get to get close to the truth, the more and more we get frustrated. What is it? What is the ideal? Do we get the ideal? Right? So our journey towards perfection, are we getting better or worse these days? Human beings, our journey, are we moving towards perfection? Quality, we are talking about quality education, quality enhancement, HECAP project, higher education quality enhancement project. So are we really enhancing quality? Is the quality is going upward or going downward? So frustrations here, frustrations there. These are all aspects of this journey from modernism to postmodernism, truth and post-truth. Right. So discourse, language. I'll go into ELT a little later, just another 1 or 2 minutes. Okay. So as I said, what seems the right interpretation today might become outdated tomorrow. So all these things will come in this, and as I said, it should be a dispersed meditation kind of talk. I'm coming back to some of these aspects afterwards. But as I said, my talk will be focused basically on ELT. And I relate modernism to methods era. And I relate postmodernism to post-methods era. And you all know these developments, especially those of us who are focused on ELT, linguistics, TESOL. We know that this modern, methods era and post-methods era are closely related to modernism and postmodernism. So methods era to post-methods era. In ELT, there has been a journey from methods era to post-methods era. Now, I said I associate methods era to modernism. And there have been experiments for one best method. And if you remember the history from the 1950s, or what's called the 19th century reformist movement, I'm referring to a book called Fundamental Concepts of ELT by H.H. Stern. So those of us who are in ELT, we must remember this book, H.H. Stern, Fundamental Concepts of ELT. A 19th century reformist movement in English language education. So the 19th century, from the 19th century reformist movement till the 1990s, mid-1990s, this can be called the methods era. Or from the classical times, when there was grammar translation method, till the end of the methods era called communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching or task-based language teaching and learning called TBLT. Binoy Babu, an ELT expert, is there. So TBLT, up to TBLT, grammar translation to TBLT. So from classical times to the mid-1990s, this was methods era. And there have been experiments with many methods. Methods are coming in and going out in quick succession, like a theater, stage. All the world is a stage, and men and women are merely players. Shakespeare, seven stages of man, as you like it. So people are coming and going. So methods are coming and going in quick succession. If you notice, from this 1950s to 1990s, mid-1990s, things are coming in and going out in quick succession. Audiolingual, Suggestopedia, silent way, community language learning, then this communicative language teaching, TBLT. So many methods are coming in and going out. So we are looking for the best methods. One best method. Something will be there, a miracle of miracles, which will solve all problems, and we learn language overnight. And the miracle, one miracle is ciphers. And there are many miracles. One day I was traveling by auto rickshaw. Auto rickshaw means I just kind of shared দুই পাশে বসে. So traveling, and I saw a book in the hand of a boy. I said, what book is that? I said, ciphers. So are you there? Learning language? Well, yes, sir. They will teach you language overnight? He said, think so, sir. So how long are you there? About a month, sir. Did you learn anything? Not yet, but I hope I will. So this kind of tablets are there. A quick fix, right? I'll go somewhere and I'll learn language because a huge demand. The demand of English is going up and up and up every day. And this center, our inner circle to outer circle and expanding circle, what is it? Catch-through. Catch-through is inner circle, outer circle, expanding circle. The circle is expanding ever and ever. And the English learning population is also increasing. If you remember, at the moment, it used to be 400, about 1050 million. At the moment, it is 1700 million. It is increasing every year. The number of English users in the world is increasing every year. The demand is going higher and higher. And with this increasing demand, there is an increasing demand on English teaching and learning as well. And you know, English language teaching has become a profession in the world, not only in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, we are rather skeptical. What will you do? Literature or language? Literature or ELT? We are confused. Our students are confused. But there's no denying the fact that it is an established profession in the world. Well, people, many of us go to IATFL, International Association of the Teachers of English as a Foreign Language. One of the biggest forums, TESOL Forum and IATFL Forum, two of the biggest forums in the world. If you go to seminars, some of our colleagues are writing proposals to attend IATFL. If you go there, there's a job center there. And there are people to recruit from all over the world. And if you go for a job search, we have our students here. If you go for job search, go to Google search. Right now, you write ELT jobs and click enter. You'll see hundreds of jobs posted from here and there all over the world. Jobs in Japan, jobs in Korea, jobs in Taiwan, jobs in China, jobs in the Middle East, jobs here, jobs there, jobs in the US, jobs in the UK, etc. From all over the world, jobs are advertised. So it's a huge profession at the moment. But compared to that, we don't have that much of a demand. There is a demand being created these days. So it is a profession by now, it's in its own right. There is a huge demand, and this increasing demand, this demand of English language education is going up. As a result, more and more people are coming forward and doing research. I suppose in your university also people are coming forward and doing research. And I see there's a great enthusiasm in Green University also. And I saw it, we generated some kind of enthusiasm at East West also. So it is working there. So there is a demand, and there is also an increasing amount of research in the world. And as you said, as I just mentioned, methods are coming in and going out in quick succession. And the last leg of the methods era was communicative language teaching. And if we say this was modernism, an ideal, and people say east or west, communicative is the best. And I think we have a colleague, I think Samsul Haq sir here. Samsul Haq sir has got a PhD on CLT. But sir, I tell you, I am a critic of CLT. I think it is imperialistic. CLT is imperialistic. It has got Western cultural bias. I can defend it, but not here in front of us. So anyway, but it was very, very popular. All over the world it was popular and considered the best method. For a long time, 1972, Delheims wrote his first article, Communicative Competence, on communicative competence. That was the beginning of communicative movement, 1972. Afterwards, 1981, Michael Canale, then 1983, Canale and Swine, and then 1990, Bachman, and then William Littlewood and Brumfitt and many others wrote books and here and there, curriculum and syllabus and materials, right? Alan Cunningsworth, and then John Mundy, and many others wrote in different areas of CLT. So it became a popular movement in the world. Very, very popular. Perhaps the most popular method or approach, you call it. Many people say it's an approach, not a method. But I would call it a method. And I have my defense. Though in textbooks and here and there, they call it approach. CLT is an approach. And if you ask me why you call it a method, I can explain why. Anyway, so approach or method, we don't go into the debate, but it was very, very popular. from the mid-70s to the mid-1990s. But right from the beginning of 1990s, people became skeptical of it. It's not delivering. Perhaps you remember, we also tried CLT in Bangladesh. But are we happy with the outcome? Learning outcome? No. Our boys and girls are fantastic in speaking and writing and reading and listening English. At least in Green University and Rajshahi University, I see that our students write an application for this or for that, but spelling problem, this problem, that problem, grammar problem. So it should be fantastic, but the outcome is not fantastic. We are frustrated. Our literature colleagues are very highly critical of it. What are we doing? আমি তো গ্রামার ট্রান্সলেশন মেথডে পড়েছি, তো আমরা তো শিখেছি ইংরেজি। তোমরা বলছো কমিউনিকেটিভ ইস্ট or ওয়েস্ট, কমিউনিকেটিভ is the best. But what is the outcome? They are right or wrong? What is our defense? No defense, because বৃক্ষ তোমার নাম কি? The answer is ফলে পরিচয়. What is the outcome? ফল কই? লাগাইলাম চারা, আম নাই গাছে, ফজলি আম, গোপালভোগ আম, গাছ আম ধরে না, ভালো গাছ ফল ধরে না। Will I say it is good? নাকি কেটে ফেলে দেব? That is the problem here and there. Not only in Bangladesh. Communicative is there, communicative methodology there, communicative materials there, communicative testing there. How much it is there, that is also worth investigation. In the classroom it is there or not, that is also to be investigated. In fact, it is not there. We talk about it, but we don't do it. Honestly, we did some research. Research findings are there. We are talking about communicative in seminars and symposiums, but when I go to the classroom, we lapse into the traditional. We found that there is data. Rubina Khan and others did an impact assessment study of LTIP study, and many of you are associated with LTIP. They observed 665 minutes of classes. They observed, this research team. Out of trained teachers, LTIP trained teachers, out of the 665 minutes, only 52 minutes are interactive, participatory, communicative. So what does this prove? So we talk about it, but we don't do it. And this is global finding. Globally also, people talk about it. The person, the teacher who says that I do communicative, if you go to his classroom, you will see it, he's doing grammar translation, right? Or this method or that method. So that is a problem. So communicative ultimately did not deliver. And there are interesting articles. Many people are skeptical and critical, like I say, modernism, we are not happy. Nirvana, we are not happy. The goal, we are not happy. The objective truth, we are not happy. What is truth? আজকে যেটা truth, কালকে মনে হচ্ছে সেটা false, right? And truth, when I see the truth is not as pleasant as we think. We think truth is very pleasant, but when you get to the truth, below the language, down the language, go deep into the language, analyze it, the supercoating of language. Below the supercoating of language, what you see is hegemony and power and oppression and discrimination. That is what ultimately you see in discourse. What is discourse about? Exploitation of the powerless by the powerful, of the powerful countries by the powerful countries by the powerless country. In the society, the high-ups and the ordinary people. So human history is a history of oppression and torture and the deprivation and this or that. Discrimination, gender discrimination, class discrimination, this discrimination, race discrimination. So this is human history. So beneath the discourse, if you go deep, you will see that is the truth. Now when you go for post-truth, what do you do? Can you resist it? Can you give voice? That will come in language, that will come in literature. Resistance, writing back, talking back, the empire writes back, right? And Ben Hooks, writing back, talking back, etc., etc. So can you resist? Are you resisting all these oppressions and deprivations and discriminations? How well are you resisting that? These are also questions in truth and post-truth. Post-truth should be resistance. But is there any good organized resistance here and there? Except, anyway, these are some of the ideas. So method sera, people are not happy with the method sera. And there are interesting articles, I'm sure all of us read it, in the 90s, mid-1990s, tissue rejection, Adrian Holiday. Tissue rejection and informal orders. And there are projects, there are Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard, I suppose all of us know, students and teachers, we are teaching Headway. Headway is produced in Bangladesh or produced there? And many of us say we cannot teach English language without English literature. Right or wrong? Cannot English be learned and taught without English literature? Are not North-South graduates learning, business graduates learning English? বলছে না, শিখছে না, কথা বলছে না, presentation দিচ্ছে না, লিখছে না. They speak fantastic English. North South, if you go to North South, you will see an all English environment. Very good. But they are not students of literature. They're not reading English literature, but they're speaking good English, writing good English. So how come they learn it? That's not true. That's not the right position. The only literature can help us learn English language. But maybe if you talk about culture, culture may be a different thing. But again, literature, what culture, whose culture? Highbrow, middlebrow, lowbrow. So it only highbrow, canonical literature and highbrow culture. Is that the only culture in England also? Working class culture, is it the same culture or different culture? So what culture, whose culture should be focused? This native speaker culture or your culture, my culture, indigenous culture, what culture should be the focus? So these are all issues in this kind of things in language education and also in literary studies. But so this kind of frustration, and there was tissue rejection is one article, and there is an article presented in National University Singapore, CMO, Regional English Language Center, RELC. We are familiar with RELC. And one gentleman, a lady, Gloria P. Sampson, presented an article, presented a paper in 1984, quite long back, when CLT was in its heydays. But she raises a question right in 1984, back in 1984. She asks a question, are methods universal? Is education universal? Do all learners in the world learn in the same way? No cultural differences, no contextual differences, no individual differences. All learners, you and I, all of us learn in the same way. Our learning style preferences are the same. Our learning strategies are the same. I can tell you a story. I suppose I have time. I will have time. 1 hour given. I hope I can manage. So, anyway, I had a niece who used to live in a ladies' hostel in Rajshahi University. One day she came to me, Uncle, I have problem in my hall. So can you please talk to the provost? I said, okay. Then and there I asked her to sit down. I talked to she was pretty junior to us. So I phoned her up and said, her name was Shilpi, the provost was Shilpi. Her name was Shilpi. I said, Shilpi, my niece has got some problem in the hall. Can you please look into it? And she said, she was very prompt, sir, within 5 minutes I'll phone you back. And within 5 minutes she phoned me back. Sir, সমস্যা তো আপনার ভাতিজির। কি সমস্যা? ও বলছে, স্যার, she reads very loudly. ক্লাসের মধ্যে রুমের মধ্যে হলে বসে বসে জোরে জোরে পড়ছে, মুখস্থ করছে, পরীক্ষা এসে গেছে। And she is reading very loudly. And the other roommates, they feel disturbed. So her style of learning and the other girls' style of learning not the same. So একজন জোরে পড়লে আরেকজনের ডিস্টার্ব হয়. This is learning style differences. There are, auditory, visual, kinesthetic, tactile, individual, serialist, and holist, all different types of learning styles. There are very differences. So individual differences, there is a wonderful book by Peter Skin, Individual Differences. So unless we recognize these differences and address it properly, if you don't address these things properly, it's not the same teaching for everyone. Teaching also is not universal. Learning also is not universal. Methods are not universal. Same method does not work with everyone. And I have got these questions, some major questions today. If you look at the slide, major questions today. Is education universal? Is teaching method universal? This is again post-truth and then truth and modernism and postmodernism. So if you think about a universal model of education, universal model of truth, there is nothing we can call objective truth and universal truth. Varies from person to person. What is good, what is bad also varies from person to person. There is no such thing called universal in the world. Theoretically, maybe there, yes, but practically there is no such thing called universal, except I'm not sure about religion. So these are now the situation in the mid-90s. There are people who are critical of the methods, and it was not delivering. And this বৃক্ষ তোমার নাম কি, ফলের পরিচয়, ফল আর পাওয়া যাচ্ছে না, বৃক্ষ আছে ফল নাই. That was the situation, and people are frustrated. Then what do we do? And then there came a man called Kumara Bhadivelu and many others. And before Kumara Bhadivelu came in 2003. He wrote a number of articles, and then he published this book, famous book, Beyond Methods. Kumara Bhadivelu, it's a popular book, very popular book in the world. And before that, you can see culture and imperialism, cultural politics of English. I'm this Alistair Pennycook. আমাদের শাইলা ম্যাডাম আছেন এখন যে ঢাকা ইউনিভার্সিটিতে, তার সুপারভাইজার ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ টেকনোলজি সিডনি। আমি সিডনিতে পড়াশোনা করেছি, তখন এই ইউনিভার্সিটি ছিল না, ইট ওয়াজ পলিটেকনিক। সিটির দিকে যেতে বাম দিকে একটা হাই রাইজ বিল্ডিং ছিল, দ্যাট ওয়াজ এ পলিটেকনিক, 86-87। Now that's a famous university, University of Technology, Sydney, and Pennycook teaches there. Pennycook is a very well-known figure in the world. So he has got this cultural politics of English. Robert Philipson, if you remember, Robert Philipson has got linguistic imperialism, and linguistic imperialism continued. And there is also this imperialistic model addressing Professor Samsul Haq Sir. So this CLT is imperialistic in design, they argue in this line. And ELT methodology is also imperialistic because it is developed by the West and then sent, promoted to the rest of the world as a solution, as a tablet. We developed this tablet, তোমরা খাও, তোমাদেরও করোনা ভাইরাস ঠিক হয়ে যাবে। কিন্তু body composition is আলাদা, the local reality is আলাদা, our background and experiences on learning cultures are different. The same solution to everyone, it is like same size fits all. So methods are same size fits all. There is a concept. Kumara Bhadiveli uses this expression. Same size fits all. পরে আমরা যেতে পারি কি? দীপ্তি একটু পরের দিকে। Same size fits all. I suppose this is a familiar concept. Same size fits all. Gulliver and Lilliputian and Brobdingnagian. আরেকটু আগে, back. Yes, this. Yes. One more. Yes. Leave it here. Right. So one size fits all is an important concept. What does it mean? Lilliputians and Brobdingnagians. I suppose we all remember. How tall are the Lilliputians? Gulliver's Travels, Jonathan Swift. 6 inches. This size? Or a little bigger maybe. Brobdingnagians, how tall are they? 60 feet. So dress of a Brobdingnagian will fit the Lilliputians. The dress of a Lilliputian will fit the Brobdingnagians. So same size fits all. আমি একবার আরেকটা গল্প বলি, tell you another story, share another story. I was on the Central Convocation Committee, Rajshahi University, Central Convocation Committee. The convocation gown, order dite hoy. So what size of gown? Usually there is a large, medium, and small. 3 sizes of convocation gown, usually. But the Vice Chancellor sir said, ekdinই তো পড়বে, same size. I said, sir, যে আমার মতো শর্ট আর আপনি 6.5 ফিট মানুষের একটা ড্রেস আমাকে পরিয়ে দিলেন, my dress will sweep the road. স্যার বলছেন আরে ফোল্ড করে নেবে, পরবে তো একদিন। আর যে স্যার যে টল, তার তো হাঁটুর উপরে উঠে থাকবে, থাক একদিনই থাকবে তো। So same size fits all. Method also like that. The same method will work everywhere. The method that will work in England, communicative language teaching with the English students, grammar school and comprehensive school. You know, in England there are 2 types of schools, comprehensive school and grammar school. Grammar schools are ideal and posh, and comprehensive schools are low prestige types of school. Experiments are mostly done in grammar schools. Ideal class size, ideal situation, ideal teachers, ideal students. So all these experiments are done there. And then promoted for the rest of the world, and I teach in Godagari School and College, Rajshahi, a remote village, for example. No good English teacher, no good classroom, no good technology, and you are using the same method in Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge and Stanford and UPenn and all these Ivy League universities, and also in Godagari College or a natural college or somewhere like that. So the same thing will work everywhere? No. So there are limitations of methods, and I have got, this one based on idealized notion. Idealized notion, and geared to idealized situations. But all contexts do not have ideal contexts and ideal situations. Methods are top-down, coming from the top. What is on top? The gurus, the Western gurus, Anglo-Americans. They are promoting top, coming down to us. And our situations and their situations not the same. Our students, their students not the same. Their learning background, our learning background, not the same. So what will work with them will not work with us. What will work with us will not work with them. So who will address these differences? And without addressing these differences, only waste, and Western people will solve all our problems. That cannot happen. Our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said the other day, what's in Washington and London will not work in our country. আমাদের দেশে কোনটা চলবে আমরা ভালো জানি। Our needs, our situations, আমরা ভালো ব্যাখ্যা করতে পারি। ওখানে ডিস্ট্যান্ট ভিউ অ্যান্ড ক্লোজ ভিউ, এখানে বসে আমরা যে ভিউ নিব, আর ওখানে লন্ডনে বসে, অক্সফোর্ড কেমব্রিজে বসে, হার্ভার্ডে বসে, ওখানে বসে তো তার ডিস্ট্যান্ট ভিউ নিবে। Distant view and close view can never be the same, right? So that is the kind of thing happening in the world with education as a whole and also with English language education. Can you go to the next slide, Dipti? So one size fits all is there. If you look at there, the last point is one size fits all. We have talked about that. Next slide, please. Yes. Methods are too inadequate and too limited to satisfactorily explain the complexity of the language teaching operations around the world. It's a complex situation. Every classroom is unique. Students are unique, teachers are unique, the classroom conditions are unique, seating arrangements are unique, learners' backgrounds are unique, teachers' backgrounds also are unique. So without taking these factors into consideration and cognition, you just force something down an unwilling throat. Think of a mother forcing something down an unwilling throat, বাচ্চা খাবে না, মা জোর করে গেলাবে, খাইতেই হবে। মাড়ো আর মাচো বাবা তোমাকে না খাইয়ে ছাড়বো না। The baby might vomit forth. তাও করো বাবা, অসুবিধা নেই, আমি গিলাবই তোমাকে। It's a kind of situation. Students like it or not, I will force it down the unwilling throat of the students. That was the kind of situation, forcing top down. And then it ignores the fact that the success or failure of classroom instruction depends to a large extent on the unstated, this is a quote, unstated and unstatable interaction of multiple factors such as teachers' cognition, learners' perception, societal needs, cultural context, political exigencies, economic imperatives, and institutional constraints, all of which are inextricably interlinked and connected. So, I do one, right? Ektaকে address করছি, I'm not addressing the other factors, no result will be found. And that is what is happening in our country and in many other contexts of the world. কথা বলেই যাচ্ছে কিন্তু কাজ হচ্ছে না। একটা অ্যাড্রেস করলে তো হবে না। আমার complex reality, the different factors contributing to it, we address only one, not the others, no result will be found. And then post-method conditions. This is also from Kumara Bhadiveli book. In the book, it is there, clearly stated. It is search for an alternative. This is, I said, post-method is, we are relating to postmodern approaches. So search for an alternative to method rather than an alternative method. Alternative to method, if you look at the bold print, post-method is an alternative to method. The very concept of method, bye-bye method. So goodbye method, no method. What do you do? Alternative to method, something other than method, because method did not deliver, method failed. Complete failure of method, frustrated and disappointed. So what was in high demand and communicative, so popular, and now people said, what is good today sounds not so good today, tomorrow. So communicative, which are so popular, they say bye-bye communicative. And a step forward. What is the step? No method. So this is the situation. Then what do we do? Alternative to methods are mainly products of bottom-up processes. We generate things from the classroom. Classroom is the bottom line. We go to the classroom. We try to understand our situation, our students, their experiences, classroom conditions, right? And the classroom composition. As I know, all of us know, there are some very bright students in every class, some average students, some below average students. There is a normal distribution curve of classrooms. This is the scenario everywhere, except the top few universities in the world, where they select from the whole world, right? The intakes are taken from the whole world. The best intakes are going there. But most universities have got the best, the average, and the below average. So normal distribution curve is like this. So that is the case. So what works with the best, top 5%, 10% students, will that work with the bottom 5%, 10%? Or if the learning styles are different, the same method will work? No. So alternatives to methods, we have to go to the classroom and see what is the composition, reality, and in that reality, what will work better. It's called intuitive heuristics. Intuitive knowledge, teachers' intuitive knowledge is also very, very important. It is not scientific knowledge that we learn from textbooks and others, etc., but also intuitive heuristics, a term used a little later, I will see it. So intuitive heuristics mean teachers' intuition also is important. What might work with this student? What might work with this student? Let me try out that. So it is not top-down that gurus say this is good and I say, yes, sir, this is good. Imam Sahib bolche Allahu Akbar, Amiyo bolche Allahu Akbar. It's not like that. So we have to analyze the ground realities. And then we have to see what will address whose problem, what kind of problem. Anyway, so alternative to methods, and then back. Reconfigures relationship. This is a very important point. Reconfigures relationship between theorizers and practitioners. There are two groups of people in education. One group are theorizing and theorizing and theorizing. And the other groups are implementing. But in Bangladesh, we are the theorizers, we are the implementers. But I suppose Najia has got fresh memory of America. In American universities and Canadian universities, they have got two types of professors. Research professors and teaching professors. Research professors will be more in research, less in teaching, more and more research. They will innovate and ideas, they will promote ideas. And these ideas will be implemented by the teaching professors. Right from the beginning, they are teaching faculty and research faculty. They are two groups of people. But in our country, we are the researchers, we are the teachers. As a matter of fact, doing too many things ultimately means doing nothing. Right? That is my philosophy, of course. You may disagree with me. Doing too many things together, hundreds of things, 101 things, ultimately means doing nothing well enough. And we sometimes describe, we have so many great professors in the country doing too many things. If they are focused, perhaps they could contribute much better. That is sometimes in popular talks. So relationship between theorizers and practitioners, reconfiguring the relationship between theorizers and practitioners. So theorizers are small in number. People who do theorize, their number is not that great. You can be, or I can be a theorizer, a comfortable desk chair researcher. Okay, doing research, studying and developing a theory. But this theory will be implemented by hundreds and thousands of teachers in the world. A theory is developed, like Littlewood and Brumfield and Henry Widdowson developed communicative language teaching. Binay Babu, taito? Okay. Okay, so Littlewood and Brumfield and C.J. Brumfield and Widdowson, they developed communicative language teaching first, and then there are many other people. But thousands of teachers are implementing. Could you implement it? So implementing is developing by a few people, but implemented by thousands of people. Can we change thousands of people overnight? হাজার শিক্ষক দেশের এলটি প্রজেক্টে আমাদের গোলাম মহিউদ্দিন সাহেব কাজ করেছেন, আমাদের শামসুল হক স্যার কাজ করেছেন। The target was training 22,000 teachers. Ultimately, they ended up with 12,000 teachers. 3 সপ্তাহের ট্রেনিং। 3 সপ্তাহের ট্রেনিং দিয়ে can you transform a man, human being? সারা জীবনের অভ্যাস 3 সপ্তাহে সব ভুলে যায়, নতুন কিছু করব সম্ভব? Impractical project. 3 সপ্তাহে মানুষকে ট্রান্সফর্ম করা যায়। এটা আইডিয়া দেওয়া যায়, কিন্তু আইডিয়া দেওয়া মানে তার ব্যবহার চেঞ্জ করে দেওয়া, ক্লাসরুম রোল চেঞ্জ করে দেওয়া, that does not happen. So anyway, the relationship between theorizers and practitioners should be reconfigured. এখানে বলা হচ্ছে একটু পরেই আমরা দেখব যে generating theories from practice. So theory driven practice and practice generated theory. This generating theory from practice, practical field থেকে জেনারেট করা থিওরি, ফিল্ড থেকে যেটা বটম আপ গ্রাউন্ড রিয়েলিটিকে অ্যাড্রেস করে যে থিওরি জেনারেট করবো, দ্যাট উইল বি মোর সাস্টেইনেবল। আর গুরুরা বলেছে সেটা নিয়ে এসে ইমপ্লিমেন্ট করলাম, দ্যাট ইজ ডিডাক্টিভ, টপ ডাউন। কমিউনিকেটিভ ওয়াজ টপ ডাউন, বাট দিস পোস্টমডার্ন ইজ আর্গুইং ফর বটম আপ। জেনারেট থিওরি ফ্রম ইউর প্র্যাকটিস, ট্রাই করো, থ্রু ট্রায়াল অ্যান্ড এরার ডেভেলপ এ থিওরি, অ্যান্ড দ্যাট থিওরি ইজ ইয়োর থিওরি। You own that theory, it emerges from your situation. But different people may have different theories. Can I have a bottle of water? Right. So that is an important point. And then, principle pragmatism, another important point. Principle pragmatism. So principle pragmatism, what does that mean? Pragmatism, we have to be pragmatic. But it's clear to us, self-explanatory term. Pragmatism, practical, but principled. This is contradictory. No theory, but when you say principle, don't take theory into practice. Rather generate theory from your practice, from the bottom. But principled, where does the principle come from? Does not principle take us back to theory? When I say principled pragmatism, this is a contradiction. So again, principle takes you close to theory. So not theory, but generating theory, but at the same time, principled pragmatism, practical, but in a principled way. So back to theory. Here is a contradiction of this man. So, but he says principled pragmatism or enlightened eclecticism. We are familiar with the term eclecticism. We are talking about eclecticism. I'm sure our ELT teachers are talking eclecticism in the classroom. Eclecticism is cutting and pasting. Good or bad? Cutting and pasting, like kind of plagiarism. Taking something from here, something from there, and putting it together, stitching together. Not bad, if we acknowledge. But enlightened eclecticism, we can do that, but in an informed way. Why am I doing what I am doing? What is my justification? এই যে কাট করলাম, এখান থেকে এইটুকু নিলাম, সেখান থেকে what is my justification for that? ওই যে নিলাম ওইটুকু কী কারণে নিলাম? Blindly? But informed with or enlightened with এই কারণে নিলাম. This is my reality, and for this reason, this will work. Something from audio lingualism, drill. Drilling and practicing, drilling works with some students. Jodi amra boli, audio lingualism is outdated. Audio lingualism not creative. Behaviorism is not creative, no creative use. Chomskyরা criticize করেছেন. But audio lingualism works with some students. Drilling works with some students, especially junior students. Repetition and drill works. তো আমি এটা নিলাম এই কারণে, কারণ আমাদের ছাত্রদের রিপিটিশন ড্রিলের একটা ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড আছে, তো ওরা শেখে এইভাবে। তো আই টেক সামথিং আপ ফ্রম অডিও লিঙ্গুয়ালিজম, আই টেক সামথিং ফ্রম গ্রামার ট্রান্সলেশন উইথ জাস্টিফিকেশন, যে এই কারণে এইটুকু আমি নিলাম। উইদাউট জাস্টিফিকেশন, ব্লাইন্ডলি কাটিং অ্যান্ড পেস্টিং, নো, দ্যাট কাইন্ড অফ eclecticism is not good. But informed and enlightened, actually, with a judicious choice, for this reason or that reason, I'm taking from something from here and this from there, that is okay. So he calls it enlightened or informed eclecticism. That is also okay. Then another important condition is sense of plausibility or subjective understanding. Teacher's subjective understanding, not the same understanding. ওই উপর থেকে পশ্চিমারা গুরুরা বলে দিয়েছে ইউজ ইট, আর পশ্চিমা গুরুরা আর কালো বললে হবে না, কিন্তু সাদা হইতে হবে। সাদা হলে একরকম ওয়েট, কালো হলে আর একরকম ওয়েট। ক্যানাগারা যা কালো, কুমারা ভাদি ভেলু কালো, মানে আমাদের কুমারা ভাদি বলে হায়দ্রাবাদের মানুষ। সুরেশ কানাগারা যা শ্রীলঙ্কার মানুষ, তামিল। কাজে এরকম স্কিনের কথা বেশি শুনি না আমরা, যদিও বইগুলো খুব নাম করা হাই ফ্লাইং বুকস, কিন্তু এটা সাদা হয়তো আমরা সাদা খুঁজি। ওই যে উই হ্যাভ এ কলোনাইজড মাইন্ড, যদিও উই আর পোস্ট কলোনিয়াল, উই হ্যাভ এ কলোনাইজড মাইন্ড, এটসেট্রা এটসেট্রা। এনিওয়ে, দোজ আর ডিবেটেবল থিংস। সেন্স অফ প্লসিবিলিটি or subjective understanding, teacher's subjective understanding. So teacher's understanding also is important. Teacher is an important factor. Teacher is an agent of change, isn't it? Like it or not, all these people, and sitting here and sitting there, I think, so teachers are very important persons. Taka poysa nai, ক্ষমতা নাই, দৌরাত্ম্য নাই, but they are the agents of change. They shape the future generation. So they are the agents of change. So their subjective understanding also important. Teachers are informed people, knowledgeable people. We should be knowledgeable. Unfortunately, people like me are not knowledgeable and informed. But using our knowledge, background knowledge and experiences, my 40 years of teaching experience does not have any value. My experience does not have any value. Your experience does not have your value. Your learning experience does not have your value. We use all these experiences and our intuitive heuristics and our experiences and our knowledge, background knowledge, and interpret the situation. And accordingly, we take decision. Definitely, it works. It works. So that is a plausible is subjective understanding of the teachers also is very, very important. So teacher is an agent. Teacher is a subject. His subjective analysis or her subjective analysis of the situation and condition and environment is very important. That should be given weightage. Only blindly imitating the gurus from the West is not the solution for us. Okay, next please. The parameters, 3 parameters. The 3 parameters are parameters of particularity, practicality, and possibility. And I have a small quote from here. Particularity means particularity of the teachers, particularity of the students, particularity of the classrooms. Who are my students? Junior students, senior students, the learning background, much of language, what amount of language, what level of language they have, and I have to address the right level. What I should do in class, the master's class, and I should be doing with the undergraduates, I mean first year undergraduates, or HSC and SSC students, should it be the same thing? Same level, same amount, and input, same level of input, same amount of input, 5 plus minus 2. The amount of input should be 5 plus minus 2. The level of input should be I plus 1, right? Krashen, monitor model theory. The input should be at I plus 1 level, not I plus 5 level, not I minus 1 level. So those of you who did monitor model theory of Krashen, you remember that. I'm sure my colleagues all remember, definitely they remember, they teach it. And amount of input, how much? How many input do I give in a class? 5 plus minus 2, not more than 7 in one class. Students cannot remember. So you have to be scientific as teacher. Haphazardly, whatever comes to my mind, that is not teaching. Anyway, so any language pedagogy to be relevant must be sensitive to a particular group of teachers, teaching a particular group of learners, pursuing a particular set of goals within a particular institutional context, embedded in a particular socio-cultural milieu. This must be recognized and respected. What is my situation, my reality? And we have to address this reality. That is particularity. Next is parameter of practicality. And the next one, number 2 here. Not the next slide, Dipti. Point number 2. Go back, yes. Point number 2 is parameter of practicality. And practicality is this: no theory of practice can be fully useful and usable unless it is generated through practice. As I said, theory generated practice or practice generated theory. Theory driven practice, taking theory into practice or generating theory from practice. So this is an important issue, and post-method argues for practice generated theory. And point number 3 is parameter of practicality. Parameter of possibility. And parameter of possibility takes us back to Paulo Freire, one of the very important educationists of the present world, Brazilian educationist, especially famous for his Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and also Pedagogy of the Distressed and Pedagogy of the Repressed, but the most famous one is Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So identity shaping is an important factor in the present world. This is post-colonialism and post-modernism, identity shaping, education, identity shaping. What kind of identity should be shaped? What should be the identity of my students like? Anglo-American type of identity? And this Machiavellian dictum, Indian in blood and color, but European in thoughts and opinions and views and so on and so forth, that kind of identity? আমার চামড়া কালোই থাকবে কিন্তু আমি মন মানসিকতা সাদাদের মতো হয়ে যাবে, ইউরোপিয়ানদের মতো, that kind of identity with the ideology and values of the West? Or I very much want to remain Bangladeshis with multiculturalism and multilingualism, the local and the global connected together, the global, right? But not global at the cost of the local. So local and the global should be combined into the identity. For example, my identity. It's a complex kind of identity, isn't it? What kind of identity? I'm a Muslim. My Muslim identity is part of me. Then if you remember, what is this? James Joyce's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, a novel. I'm sure all of us remember. And this Stephen Dedalus. Remember, I hope we remember Stephen Dedalus, the note boy লিখছেন Stephen Dedalus, Ireland. So তারা লেখার নাম লিখছেন Dublin, Ireland, then the world, the universe. This is identity, complex identity. সে ডাবলিনের বাসিন্দা, আমি যেমন গ্রামের বাসিন্দা ছিলাম, তারপরে পাবনার শহরের বাসিন্দা, তারপরে রাজশাহীর বাসিন্দা, তারপরে ঢাকার বাসিন্দা, বাংলাদেশের বাসিন্দা, লন্ডনের বাসিন্দা, সিডনির বাসিন্দা, পেনসিলভেনিয়া স্টেট ইউনিভার্সিটির বাসিন্দা. So the local and the global combine with us. So this identity shaping, আমি বাঙালিত্ব ভুলে যে ইংরেজদের মতো করে ইংরেজি বলে আমাদের ইংলিশ মিডিয়ামের ছেলেমেয়েরা যেরকম বলছে, forget বাংলা অ্যান্ড লার্ন ইংলিশ, মাইকেল মধুসূদনের মতো স্বপ্নও দেখতে হবে ইংরেজিতে, খুব ভালো, কিন্তু অ্যাট দ্য কস্ট অফ বাংলা। আমি ইংরেজি বলবো ইংরেজদের মতো করে, দের ইজ নো প্রবলেম উইথ দ্যাট, বাট আই শুড স্পিক বাংলা লাইক বাংলা। বাংলাদেশে বাস করে বাংলাদেশে আলু ভর্তা, কেচকি মাখার মসুরের ডাল খেয়ে আমি বাংলা ইংরেজির মতো করে বলবো, এটা আমাকে কেউ অধিকার দেয়নি। আমাকে আই শুড স্পিক বাংলা লাইক বাংলা, ইংলিশ লাইক ইংলিশ, বাট বাংলা লাইক ইংলিশ, দ্যাট ইজ টু মাচ, টু মাচ। Anyway, so what kind of identity should I be shaping? Local, global, or glocal, or whatever? This is an important issue in education, in English education also, but how do I address that? There have been studies, a number of studies here and there. And one study, for example, has been conducted in 3 countries, in India, in Bangkok, Thailand, and in Malaysia. And people have been asked, "Tumi ye English shikcho, why are you learning English? To be like the English people? Or you are learning English for your own functional purposes, but you want to remain very much an Indian or a Thai or a Malaysian?" And most of them say, "I don't like to be like the English people. I don't like to behave like the English people. I don't even like them, love them. But I love my country, but I'm learning English for functional operational purposes. I need it for functional operational purposes, but not to be like them and behave like them. And my cultural capital is this Anglo-American cultural capital, no, not like that." So this is an important issue. Shaping identity of the learners is a very important issue in education, very serious, high serious issue in education. We must not forget that. Our students, what kind of identity should be shaped in our graduates? Very much Bangladeshis, definitely, but local and the global should be connected. I mean, should I isolate থাকবো তাও না, I should be connected, but this connection does not mean that I should be forgetting my Bangladeshi values and culture. At the cost of my Bangladeshi values and cultures, I learned that. Crossover. And then post-methods 6.2, language, there are many other things, I think I'll skip that, but these are some of the, all of us know that, the post-method strategies. But some of the terms might be familiar to us. Minimizing, number 2, for example, minimizing perceptual mismatch, an important point. What the students consider to be good learning and good teaching. And I suppose many of us know that there have been studies in the world, good language learner studies. Very famous project, a Canadian project in the 1980s, Good Language Learner Project. So in the Good Language Learner Project, who is a good language learner? And then Good Language Teacher Project. There have been projects on good language teacher. Who is a good language teacher? So what is the student's perception about good language learner, good language teacher? And what is the teacher's perception of good language learner, good language teacher? Do they match or they mismatch? This mismatch is an important thing. If they match, there will be a good ideal situation. If they mismatch, there will be kind of contrast and clash. So we should minimize this perceptual mismatch. Students expect one thing and teachers do another thing. The teaching style and the learning style should be matching in some way. Otherwise, it will be forcing something down an unwilling throat. So we should know the learner's learning style preferences and so on and so forth. So there is number 2, facilitate negotiated interaction. What should be the type of interaction? It should be negotiated. In consultation with the teacher, we should decide about the format of negotiation. Promote learner autonomy, not going to explain that. Foster language awareness, not going to elaborate that, it's familiar. Activate intuitive heuristic. This was the point I was making a little earlier. Intuitive heuristics. Heuristics is knowledge. Intuitive is intuitive knowledge. I suppose all of us remember Vygotsky, Russian philosopher and psychologist. Vygotsky said there are 3 types of knowledge. One is intuitive. We have intuition. Our intuition say what is good, what is bad, what you should do and what you should not do. So intuitive things are also important. We should not overlook it, though it's not scientific. Then experiential knowledge. We gather experience. Our experience also teaches us a lot. So experiential learning. And there is scientific knowledge, the kind of things that we learn from our analysis and interpretation in lab, in classrooms, through readings of other people and so on and so forth. That's scientific knowledge. So intuitive heuristics is instinctive responses. That should also be properly utilized and activated. Contextualize linguistic input, integrate language skills, ensure social relevance. relating to the social situations and ensuring social relevance also is important thing. And raise cultural consciousness, they are important things. But there are some challenges. If you go to the next page, please, Dipti, quickly. And is it possible? Are our teachers capable of that? So talking, again, the question is, talking is easy. Giving a lecture is easy. But implementing is not easy. Is the situation ripe for us in our country? We are talking, means that everything will be there in the classroom. Are we capable of using and implementing this in the classroom? Perhaps not yet, right? And then next here, please. Well, and I'll conclude very soon. There is something we call critical pedagogy, a development called critical pedagogy. We have to be critiquing things and critically analyzing and interpreting and evaluating things. And critical pedagogy also addresses this critical learning, critical engagement, critical thinking. Who am I? What should be my identity? What do belong to me and what I do belong to, etc., etc. And our design and methodology, syllabus and materials, all should focus on this critical intellect, critical engagement, critical thinking, and shaping of the identity of the learners. And critical reflection on the hidden values, agenda, and interests. So whatever is coming down to us, there is a branch of a study called critical discourse analysis. As a matter of fact, East West University was the first in our country where we had a course called critical discourse analysis. As a matter of fact, when I was chairing the department, I introduced it. Afterwards, we have a colleague there, Dr. Shahriar Haq. He has a PhD on critical discourse analysis, the only PhD on critical discourse analysis in Bangladesh, in English discipline. So he teaches it, but his focus is only mostly advertisement. But all kinds of discourses can be covered under this critical discourse analysis. Discourse, again, is a high serious thing. It's politics of discourse. Every discourse has a super coating. When I say what I call principles of inclusion and principles of exclusion, what I select and what I leave out, what is present and what is absent, there is a politics. What should be present and what should be left out, that is politics. And I will select only whatever will be favorable for me to present my ideas. There are many things out of that. I'm carefully leaving those things out. So what is the politics? Why? And there is a super coating, like advertisement. What happens there? Pacha shaban, best shaban bole chalachhi amra. The worst is passed on as the best. How? With the play of language. So language is power, but at the same time, language deceives. There is a super coating of language. And in postmodern age, we have to go beneath this super coating to the reality and see Makal Phal. Have our students seen Makal Phal? Kothai dekhla baba? Ma? Baba ba ma? Makal Phal to nai. Ase? Asa. Anyway, if you have seen, you are lucky. We have seen in our youth. ছোট বয়সে দেখছি এখন আর দেখি না চোখে পড়ে না তাই না মাকাল ফল what is it like? Very attractive exterior, but interior, have you seen the interior? Repulsive. So attractive super coating, advertisement, there is a super coating, very good language and polish and so on and so forth, but underneath it is not as good. So all discourses are like that. যখন তৈরি করা হয়, so we have to go deep into things, all types of discourses, language teaching, literature, the ideas coming to us. We should take a critical stand. Ashlo bolei ami grohon kore fellam, it's coming from the West and accept it. No. We have to be critical. How good, how bad is this for us? We should weigh it. Ojon kore dekhbo, palla kon dike bhari. How it fits us, fits our culture, right? Critically examine them, interpret them, and see what is going to work here, what is not going to work here, what is good for us, what is not so good for us. Then we accept or reject. That is critical discourse analysis. Analyze all discourses, go deep into it, find out, and then if you feel you should resist, we should resist. And if it is acceptable, we will accept it, no problem. So we will not shut our doors. That will be cultural prejudice. Gordon Allport, 1954, has a very interesting book called Cultural Prejudice. So we don't want to be prejudiced against something. We want to be rationally analyze and interpret. If it is worth accepting, we'll accept. If not, we'll reject it. That should be our position for anything, ELT or literature or normal discourses and critical discourses, political discourses, whatever.
Sir, we have understood that we should say goodbye to the methods that is created by any principle from the West or anybody else that follows any center, that follows any order. And we should create methods in our own context. When the context is ours, we should create the methods by ourselves. But my question is, in that case, there will be a chaotic situations of multiple methods, multiple thousands of methods. And how can we introduce to the future students that these are the order we should study in ELT, in linguist teaching? How can we make them introduce that these are the orders? Because at that time, we cannot define what is the central methods we should follow. So that is my question, sir.
I feel is this enlightened eclecticism. Well, they are saying alternative to method. The expression I pick up on is this alternative to method. So not method, but alternative to method. But at the same time, the same person in the same book, same chapter, he says that enlightened eclecticism. So here, when it says enlightened eclecticism, it is not an alternative to method, but selection from methods. Judicious, informed, enlightened choice from methods. So on the one hand, he is saying alternative to method. On the other hand, he is saying informed, enlightened eclecticism. So there is a contradiction. There is a contradiction in the writer himself. So it's not really altogether goodbye, but not entirely depending on methods also. But selecting judiciously from here and there of the methods if you think that this will work with your students. But you are the agent. And there is no such thing, as I said, I agree with that, I believe in that, no such thing as universal method. That we follow the same method, same size fits all, that is not going to use, I can give guarantee. My experience, same method will work everywhere. Something called universal method, universal way of learning, there is no such thing. That is outdated, obsolete. So individual attention should be given. Cultural factors should be taken into consideration. So same central method will work everywhere. Those days are gone. But something from there will not be, as I said, culturally prejudiced. Gordon Allport. Prejudice is a bad thing, but we will be open. And if we feel that the teacher's intuitive heuristics, if teacher feels that this will work with this student, he may go for choosing that. Not absolutely closing the door, but keeping it open, but not blindly imitating everything from A to Z. But you can judiciously choose something from here, something from there. This is his position, and I agree with him on this point. Thank you.
I know you pointed out that we juggled between methods, lot of methods, not between, since independence. And then we have the NCTB curriculum written by our people. But still we see there is a lack of linguistic development in our country. We have students coming to university who are not good in English as well as not good in Bangla. So when we are doing it by ourselves, we have NCTB textbooks written by our people. What's going wrong? Why can't we even develop a Bangladeshi accent like the Indians? Why do we lag behind?
A lot of problems. Number one, talking theory and doing it is not the same thing. I was also a co-author of the NCTB textbook, SSC textbook. Not the present one. Very recently there is a book. I am not an author of that book, but the previous one and the previous one, I happen to be a co-author of the NCTB SSC textbook. Okay, having a book and having a curriculum means some problems will be solved. The curriculum has to be taken into the classroom. Classroom is the learning space. Safe house, Kanagaraja calls it safe house, or learning space. So we have to take the curriculum into the classroom and implement it. We have to take the textbook into the classroom and use it properly. And as I said, this impact assessment study, we are talking communicative in seminars and symposiums. In the classrooms, we are not doing communicative. But we are shifting the whole blame on communicative theories, but we have not implemented communicative. Only textbook and syllabus cannot guarantee everything. The other factors should also be addressed seriously. So in our country, curriculum we are talking about syllabus, the textbook is more or less interactive, student-centered, but the classrooms are entirely still lecture-oriented. So what we say and what we do, there is a gap, and that is why we cannot reach our goal. Is that the answer? More or less, yes.
There is a gap between classroom practice or curriculum and curriculum as well, and there is a gap between curriculum and assessment in HSC and SSC. Here we find that in communicative approach, particularly we have to test 4 skills, but in actuality we test 2 skills. So there's a gap between that. How can we reduce or bridge the gap?
We know that in testing literature, there are 3 important factors: reliability, validity, and administrability. Well, as a co-author of the higher secondary English textbook, English for today, classes 11 and 12, we are actively thinking of that. And we had a consultant from England, Sarah, and Sarah was also on the committee. So we used to sit together, and I thought about it. And afterwards, I was also a member of a national committee headed by a UGC member, Professor Atful Hai Shibli, and also coordinated by Professor Syed Manjurul Islam, SM ISA. I worked on a national committee formed by the Education Ministry to recommend measures for improvement of the status of English teaching and learning in Bangladesh. And we submitted our report, but the report has not seen light. It was during the time of Mr. Nurul Islam Nahid. We submitted the report to him, what should be done, etc., etc. Motamoti well thought out and well planned, but what the government thinks now and what the government thinks then, after a week or so, no, it changes. But the point is this: why the 2 major skills are not there in the public exams like SSC and ACC? The answer is, it's very difficult to administer a listening test at the national level where about 10 lakh students are taking the exam. SSC about 10 lakhs or even more, ACC about 10 lakhs. So how do you administer the test? Spoken English test, for example. Interview, face-to-face interview, telephonic interview, what would the mode of testing? And listening test, if you remember, country-wide public exam, how do you administer the listening test? That is a serious problem. But we recommended that this should be addressed in the form of continuous assessment. Those of us who teach testing, there is a kind of testing called continuous assessment. Final achievement test and continuous assessment test. Summative and formative and summative, we know that. So at the school level and college level, this can be done. So we recommended that 10 marks can be system loss. Out of 200, let's say 10 marks for speaking, 10 marks for listening. 20 mark. Dhore neন system loss, বিদ্যুতের মতো system loss. So তারপরেও let there be continuous assessment at the school level or college level. Throughout the year, the English teachers will be doing works, presentation and discussions and introductions, etc. They will keep record and they will award marks. And maybe at the time of final exam, externals can come, like for example, the practical exams for sciences, external examiner comes. So one external examiner comes from another school and conducts the viva voce. That was a suggestion, but suggesting and doing by the boards and so on, by the ministry, is not the same thing. So execution of the thing perhaps was found difficult by the authority and it was not executed. But there is challenge of administrability. There is no denying the fact. Thank you very much.
There is always debate whether the defiance of the center, defiance of authority is good or not, whether mere chaos, disorder is good or not. I should conclude my speech with reciting a poem. He identified the tendency of blending the center and periphery and going berserk. So, let me recite it. It's a funny poem from Khapchara. সন্ধ্যাবেলা বন্ধু ঘরে ঢুকলো চুপি চুপি গোপেন্দ্র মুস্তুফি ভিড় লেগে যায় তার সে ঘরে, সবাই দেখে তারিফ করে, পাগড়িতে তার জুতো জোড়া, পায়ে রঙিন টুপি। এই উপদেশ দিতে এলো, সব করা চাই এলোমেলো, মাথায় পায়ে থাকবে না ভেদ, চেঁচিয়ে বলে গুপি, গোপেন্দ্র মুস্তফি। So that's the post-modern order. There will be no harmony, no consistency, no order, only chaos. Bisringkhola. Thank you so much. Thanks all for your great patience.
The session is basically intended for the students and not for the teachers, but teachers will not leave this session. Cordially request you. Hope you will enjoy this session. So I would like to ask questions, Nazia, very simple questions that would you please, define the word truth, post-truth, or no truth indeed, in this era. So how do you define, how do you feel about these terms?
I think before I try or even attempt to define what those terms are, I would like to go back to something Dr. Shohidullah indicated. What is post? It's a very buzzworthy use of the word post, that when it's associated with something such as truth, because truth, we think, is one of the fundamental philosophical constructs of being human itself. Truth, when I think of the term, I think of it having a meaning that is specific, or to use a word Dr. Shohidullah used, that is subjective to being human. In my understanding, truth and humanity are interlinked as concepts in the philosophical sense. And so when the word post is placed right in front of the word truth, I am curious to know in what way we are using that. Because post, as we just said, has become a buzzword, right? There's post-colonialism, there is post-secularism. Shakhawat and I were just talking about it on our way here. There's post-memory. But every use of the post is significantly different from the other. So what happens when we're thinking of something as opaque and at the same time as contradictory as post-truth? Does it mean we have left truth behind and moved ahead? Does it mean that it's a continuation of truth as we defined it before? Does it mean that it's a resistance to the strict boundary, the rigid definitions of truth? Or does it simply mean truth, like many things in postmodernity, has now become a malleable construct? The truth is fluid. There's a flexibility to truth. And there's a sort of slippage when we move from the two concepts, truth and post-truth. Post-truth doesn't necessarily mean non-truth, because when you add the prefix non, the meaning changes entirely. So my understanding would be, or what I would be interested to talk about, would be the slippage between truth and post-truth, the malleability of it, and how the fixity is challenged.
So you're talking about the slippage issues and the malleability of truth and post-truth. Does truth really exist, Professor Azam?
While we speak basically about truth and post-truth, the entire phenomena is completely different, and it's an attitude, basically. It's a point where we emphasize on some aspects or perspectives rather than others. So the entire discussion about truth is basically related to fixity of meaning. Fixity of meaning with words, sentences, and language, overall language. The main basic problem is that in modern age, in 19th century, say, and also in early 20th century, people used to think that we mean something definite while we say something. We convey some meaning in a language. So that is the basic of the fixity of thoughts, the fixity of meaning, and that is also the basic of truth. But in 1960s basically, in the era of structuralism and then post-structuralism, the basic changes in our thought procedure, in our thinking, in our attitudes to things, in this way that people discovered that really we don't have fixed meaning in words, in phrases, in sentences, and overall in language. So everything shifted, everything was basically changed due to this, which is leveled, as all of you know, the linguistic turn of philosophy. In modern age, the people were used to think in this way that I am a man, I am educated, I am learned, I am enlightened, I am rational, I am superior to other people, so I am producing thoughts, I am producing ideas, I am producing truths, and I am giving those truths and ideas in my write-up, in my text, in my book, in my literature, or in my philosophy. But while you know that you can't do this because you are not authority of any language, of any meaning-making procedure of language, then the whole idea will be changed, and then you can claim truth. You can claim single truth. So I think it's an attitude, basically. It's not the destruction of truth, or it's not the, it's a shipment. So what is the basic of that shipment? The basic of that shipment that previously you are habituated to think that there is an universal truth, fixed truth. Some people will produce those truths, especially we know it happened in the West, and white male people always used to produce the truth, and the rest of the people all over the world will follow that truth. But now we can easily claim that there is no such truth as universal, as confident, as evident, as to be followed by all others. So there are many truths depending on time and space of particular zone, a particular situation. So we can say it's not post-truth. I don't use the word post-truth. I use the single truth, single definition, single logic, single meaning, and many truths, particular truths, strategic truths, truths of some situation or event or individual, etc., etc.
Shamim bhai, you are teaching for a long time. Journey from modern to postmodern. How do you see it? Do you see a postmodern age here in Bangladesh or not? How is your feelings actually?
Look, I will share you one incident. When Adum Surat was being made, that time SM Sultan told Tariq Masood one thing. Why do you look at the people, our farmers, our villagers, from bird's eye view? Look at them from frog's eye view. And when you look at them from frog's eye view, from the bottom, then you will find them muscular. And if you look at his painting, you will find them muscular. But when you look from bird's eye view, then they are a skeleton. That's the difference between, that journey of modernity and postmodernity, truth and post-truth. And another thing is, my daughter is attending in a school, and she is in class 3. And there she was told a story, and there was about a hacked head on the stair of the school. And when she came out of the school, she was sobbing, she was crying, and she cannot make it untrue that someone dead was lying there, and when she would go to school, she will find it. And she was always fearing that whenever she will go, she will encounter that kind of things. Then what is the truth? I was telling that it's not possible, but she is saying that it's possible. So in between, both are truth, and she was taking time for perhaps 2 days to overcome these kind of things. Now, when the question was flung at me almost, when you was talking about the journey of modernity to postmodernity, especially in our context, then I was feeling a bit sorry for the reality that all the thoughts, all the insights, all the theories are coming from, flooding from outside, and we are gobbling them. We're just the consumers. and we are hardly contextualizing them. We are sometimes, some of the scholars are talking about them, but never we are getting to explore our strength. And for this, no theory has been our theory, and we have never been a theoretician. Hardly, actually. Maybe we'll find out some people. So what I believe is that the journey in our country of modernity to post-modernity, it is everything coming out from outside. Think of Jivan Das writing Bodh or Aat Bochhor Ager Ek Din, and the way he was talking about a modern man, is it possible that the people when they were struggling against the British, they were thinking like that? When it was possible in Europe, in the background of the First World War. So when we're copying and pasting, perhaps we are emulating something which we are not, and still we're doing the same thing. What I believe, if this discussion can at least make us feel that post-modernity has one great strength, and that is to empower, feel the empowerment of diversity. And you can feel yourself, you have your own identity, and that you can also be proud of that, because grand narrative has been dismantled. But again, there is another big question, because we are under a grand narrative, especially when we are taking our religious faith and belief. Then should we take the dismantling of grand narrative from postmodernity and apply it here in the same manner or not? So this is again another problematic area. সো আমি যেটা বলবো সেটা হচ্ছে যে এই যে মডার্নিটি পোস্ট মডার্নিটি যেটার কথাই বলি না কেন, আমাদের যে যাত্রা আছে, আমাদের যে চলন আছে, সেখানে আমাদের একটা অনুকরণের জায়গা আছে। আমাদের নিজস্ব সত্তা বা শক্তিকে ধারণ করে ভেবে এটাকে এগিয়ে নেবার প্রচেষ্টা খুব কম আছে। আমাদের শুধু অনুকরণ করবার ব্যাপার আছে, নিজেকে বিকশিত করবার মতো অবস্থান নেওয়ার মতো আমরা অবস্থান নিতে পারিনি, এটাই সত্য। এবং একজন শিক্ষক হিসাবে এই দুঃখজনক অবস্থাকে আমি স্বীকার করছি। ধন্যবাদ।
That's the thing, basically, say breaking down of grand narrative, right? That's what we're doing here, most probably, or trying to analyze and understand. Yeah, say a different view from Shakhwat. You were an animal lover. Love for animal and love for human. There is a word humanity, but I don't know, is there any word for animal lovers? I think that in this postmodern era, I mean, how do you inculcate these things, address these things basically in terms of reserving animal kingdoms, ecosystems, or the nature basically in this post-truth era where our ecosystem is in danger, but again at the same time the corporates are saying that we will save it. We do have our CSR projects. So do you find any lies, any shrewd things in these post narratives? What is your saying actually?
To begin with, the truth is there is no truth. Contrary to Professor Barman and Professor Shohidullah, with due respect to both of you sirs, I actually see great possibilities, great optimism in postmodernism or post-truth era. Now, just to clarify Sir's point of view a bit, Sir was talking about this Himalaya and the perspective of some individuals, as if it's me who will determine whether the Himalaya exists or not. I understand that bit. But what about the Himalaya itself? Was it mandatory for the Himalaya to exist in the first case? What about the planet itself? Was it mandatory for it to exist at all? Pointing to that, sir, I understand that at the moment, the understanding we have so far around us is the era of postmodernism or post-truth. I mean, we often find it chaotic, as if it is an anarchy, it is a chaos. But as I said, I actually see great hope in the era of this postmodernism or post-truth. To explain a bit more, Jean-François Lyotard, the great French philosopher, he stated about postmodernism. What is postmodernism? So I quote from Lyotard. He says, incredulity towards meta-narrative. What is incredulity? Disbelief. When you do not believe in any universal statements. For example, Azam Bhai was referring to Lashkar's name, Arif Lashkar. Or let's talk about my name. I'm introducing myself as Sakhawat Hussain wherever I go, as if I am truly Sakhawat Hussain. But that is not the case. It is a name given my parents, my family, the society addresses me that way, as if it is the absolute truth. But the idea in the age of postmodernism or post-truth is, it is not an absolute fact. It is just a sound image that refers to an individual. In other words, if I was called, let's say in my childhood, Peter Smith, today I would have introduced myself to you as Peter Smith, and you would have believed it. Would you or not? So do you see how relative truth is? Even the color. What color is this? How do you know it? It is black. Because your ancestors have been calling it black for thousands of years. What time is it now? 12:36. Only because you believe in the idea that there are 24 hours. If our ancestors previously determined 24 hours, not a day, 12 hours a day, or 48 hours a day, you would have believed accordingly today. Same here, right? Now, the point that I'm trying to raise here is, Lashkar asked us to reach the university before 11 o'clock. Just because I'm saying there is no 11 o'clock, I mean no absolute truth, do I mean that I would not come by 11 o'clock at the university? I would have come. Otherwise, that would create a chaos and anarchy. I agree to that. But at the same time, we also need to be aware of the idea that there is nothing called absolutely 11 o'clock. There is nothing called absolutely black. There is nothing called absolutely Sakhawat Hussain. And it's not only about, an identity or a color or time. It's also about practices. In the poem, The Wasteland, T.S. Eliot, the poet. So I see one man is asking another man to a residential hotel. And Eliot cannot tolerate it. Eliot cannot accept it. Because the whole world is so much into heterosexual norms, is it or not? That a man will have an interest in a woman or vice versa. Not a man asking another man to a place. So we see in the poem that Eliot finds it difficult. Once again, what I mean to say is that we need to have that flexibility, that I will have my kind of understanding and someone else will have his or her kind of understanding. And both of us together can walk through peacefully. Now, to come down to the last bit of Lashkar's point about the animal and the human. Yes, I think I needed to prepare myself, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, that's a great answer.
So the issues regarding the animals these days that I find a lot of interest in the representation of animals in literature. what humans have done for hundreds of years, if not for thousands of years. I think they have highly misrepresented the animals through their texts. And it is only in the era of postmodernism I see some hope that some authors are actually raising questions against the representation of animals. For example, J.M. Coetzee, in his novel Disgrace, I see that he is actually raising a lot of questions about the representation of animals. The idea is animals feel pain, and humans disregarded that, disregard it still. And I think it's not easy to stop disregarding the pain or the suffering of the animals all of a sudden. Why? Because the mainstreamers, traditional people, conventional people, they are so much into, ignoring the suffering of the animals. But I see great hope, like I said, in the era of postmodernism. In a poem called The Fish by the American poet Elizabeth Bishop, in the beginning of the poet is very proud of catching a fish. Did some of you ever catch fish? Oh, I see so many hands. And did you feel victorious after catching it? But in that poem, the poet is also very proud of catching a fish in the very beginning. But the fish is very old. It has some 4 to 5 fish hooks, all broken. So the poet, as she takes the fish out of the waters, she understands that it is very old, so it's not fighting back. Usually when you take an animal out of its natural habitat, doesn't it fight back? It struggles. It wants to go back to the waters. To be more specific about the fish. At the end of the poem, let me quote from the poem, The Fish. Until rainbow, 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 and I let the fish go. So, in the beginning, she was very proud of catching the fish, victorious, but by the time she comes to the very end, she discovers that there is no victory in catching a fish, in torturing it, in murdering it, mixing up spices and eating it up. She rather discovers something from within, that there is great victory in letting the fish go. And the same is true for all other animals, I believe. And to conclude, postmodernism or the post-truth era is actually unfolding so many ways for us. It reminds us to be compassionate not only to the humans but also to the animals, or let's say non-human creatures, if I may put it that way.
So the first thing, Shakat was talking about, and Shamim Bhai was incredulity towards meta-narratives by Lautert, right? So, and then he was Azum Bhai was talking about text and relationship in authors. So how do you see there in this postmodern age, the relationship between text and author? What's politics in it? Is there any politics, and how do you see and explain it? And how do you teach that thing in the classroom as you are a teacher?
Thank you. আমি যদি একটু continue করতে পারি from the conversations that we were having. So Shakhawat was talking about the animal that therefore I am, as Derrida would put it. And I would like to continue that thread and also think a little bit about objects, not just about humans, not just about animals, but also about objects. Karonta holo, one of the strengths of modernity and further strengths of postmodernity is it attempts to destabilize the human centricity of the world itself. The world is imagined as human-centric. Human beings are at the center of it. and our philosophy, our bearing, the way we stand, the way we move, the way we think, everything is shaped around human thought. And human thought almost always silences non-humanity, animality, and objectness. And I would argue that one way to destabilize man, and when I say man, I mean man with a capital M, and traditionally, that man is probably white, heterosexual, able-bodied, somebody who owns property, and somebody who has access to education, and someone who can speak or have political subjectivity, right? So that man has been at the center of our thought for millennia. Human thought, human existence was geared towards the man. It was, man-centric, not only, but also it dispersed from the man. Historically, আমরা অনেক ভাবে এটাকে ভাঙার চেষ্টা করেছি. Whether you want to talk about the feminist movement, whether you want to talk about the anti-Euro-Western supremacy of thought, whether we want to talk about theories that fascinate us, for instance, post-coloniality or affect theory or queer theory, সবকিছুর মূলটা আমার মনে হয় it's pretty much the same. Like it's attempting to dethrone man from its man-centric point. And we're trying to stage an alternative discourse. The animal and the object are two alternative pathways that can give us an avenue or separate avenues of thought, which I find to be really interesting. If I may use an example from a literary text, and this might answer your question as to how I negotiate the presence of the non-human or the presence of the animal in the literary text. Amra Manto পড়েছি, Sadat Hossein Manto. Are we familiar with his work? He writes about partition, a lot of short stories about partition. He has this really famous story called Kholdo. Trigger warning, this is a story about some brutal violence that happens against a woman in partition era. The story, very briefly, is about a Muslim woman who was escaping riots, she and her father, and then they got separated, the father and the daughter. They get separated. The father keeps looking for the daughter, and the father asks the camp volunteers, other men, that, I have a daughter, her name is Sakina, she has a scar on her face, she has a mole on her face. If you find her, please let me know. They do find her, but they do not let the father know. Sakina was repeatedly raped by the very men who were supposed to save her, protect her, return her to her father. A significant amount of time goes by, and eventually her body is discovered by the side of the camp, and then she's brought into the camp hospital. Because of her mole, which was easily identifiable, someone informs Shirajuddin, her father, that we found somebody, we think it's your daughter. So he walks into the hospital room where she's lying on a stretcher. A doctor walks in, the doctor and the father, and the doctor says, "Why is it so dark in here? Open the window. Khirki khol do." That's what he says in original Urdu. Sakina's body moves to open the strings of her shalwar, and the doctor is drenched from head to sweat. That's the last line of the story. 3 things are important here. 1, the doctor enters the room thinking it's a dead body. Sakina's father enters the room thinking the body of his dead daughter has been found. The doctor says, "Khirki khol do." She interprets it as an indication that she needs to open her shalwar. I think it's a testimony to what has happened to her in the past. It drenches the doctor from head to toe. It makes her father exclaim, "She's alive." In my interpretation, when I teach the story or when I write about the story, and I have, my interpretation is Sakina's body is animated, and it bears witness through the traumatic event of partition, through the movement of a non-living object, the string of a shalwar. The testimony that her body gives is animated through the string of a shalwar. The string of a shalwar is an object, and that object speaks when Sakina cannot. In other words, I have an object-oriented interpretation of the story, as opposed to paying even closer attention to the sexualization and the violation that the female body had undergone. This is not to take away from the abuse and the torture that Sakina faced at all. But an object-oriented interpretation allows us to think of that movement instead of it simply being a movement marked by PTSD. It becomes a movement that protests the unimaginable trauma that she and countless other women have been through. So this is just a simple example of how I think we can change our human-centric perceptions and bring that discourse in the literary classroom. And
Relationship between text author, postmodern
Relationship,
era in
right.
brief.
And if I could continue what we were saying about, the modern man, Jibananandar modern man or T.S. Eliot modern man, can we think about them in the same way? I think modernity itself has a Euro-Western problem, as we were saying. It's a Euro-Western construct. And when we try to talk about modernity, or when we try to talk about postmodernity in our classrooms here, our responsibility would, again, be to challenge the fixity of the Euro-Westernness of it. For example, Paul Gilroy has a fantastic book called The Black Atlantic, where he talks about the slave plantation as the birthplace of modernity, of the Black Atlantic. That European modernity doesn't make sense if we do not consider what happened in the plantations. Plantation কি হয়েছিল? I think we know the answer. If we know anything about slave history, they would talk to each other, they would sing, their music became a vehicle of communication. There was a lot of countercultural movement, to use another common language, within the plantation. And the music that we now take for granted, for instance, jazz or sorrow songs that the enslaved would sing to one another, those shaped the very culture of Europe as we now know it. And in order for me to teach modernity, I have to involve the Black Atlantic. In order for me to teach modernity in a Bangladeshi classroom, I have to talk about Jibanananda. I have to even bring in the women in Rabindranath and how those aspects of modernity simply do not mimic but challenge the existing status quo that has been prescribed to us. Ami ashole ashabadi. I think, just like Shakawat said, I see a lot of potential, not just in modernity, but also in the postmodern condition. একটা কুল টার্ম বের হয়েছে এখন, সেটা হলো পোস্টমডার্নিটি। অনেকে বলে যে 2000-এর পর থেকে, পার্টিকুলারলি 9/11-এর পর থেকে আমরা আরেকটা এপক পরিবর্তন হয়েছে, which again I find to be promising, because there's only one constant in life and literature and in literary interpretation, and that happens to be change. The beauty of what we do is we're open to alternatives, we're open to change, we're open to thinking alternatively. And so I find the possibility of postmodernity to be a hugely rewarding space. And it is up to us to capture the space. And I don't mean recapture it. It's up to us to destabilize the status quo and to capture our space in it. We make it what we wanted to make it.
Yeah, very good spirit. Nazia was talking about fascination for theories. Coming to that point, nowadays theory is becoming very buzzing word. To the academicians, theories and theories. Where are texts then? We teachers go in the classroom to teach texts. So how do you deal theories and texts together? Which one should get priority? What is the important to close reading of text maybe given by I. Richards? So are theories eclipsing text or shrouding text? What do you feel?
Okay, I think
বাংলায় বলতে পারেন।
Okay. থিওরি খারাপ জিনিস না, যদি কেউ থিওরির বশীভূত হয়ে না যায়। থিওরি হলো খেয়ে ফেলে আমাদের, আর খেয়ে ফেলার প্রধান কারণটা হলো এটা তো বাইরে থেকে এসছে। এই যে মডার্নিটি, পোস্টমডার্নিটি, ট্রুথ, পোস্ট ট্রুথ, এই যে এই আলাপের একটা বেসিক প্রবলেম হলো যে এগুলো প্রত্যেকটা হলো ফার্স্ট ওয়ার্ল্ডের ব্যাপার। ফার্স্ট ওয়ার্ল্ডের ব্যাপার কেন? কারণ এই নয় যে তারা খুবই সুপিরিয়র, তারা খুবই বুদ্ধিমান, তারা থিওরি প্রডিউস করে, থিংস আর নট লাইক দ্যাট। এটা পুরোপুরি একদম প্র্যাকটিক্যাল লাইফ থেকে উদ্ভূত। এর সঙ্গে তার কলোনির যোগ আছে, এর সঙ্গে তার মডার্নিটি, এনলাইটেনমেন্ট, রেশনালিটি, প্রযুক্তির যে উন্নতি এবং ক্যাপিটালিজমের যে কয়েকটা ফেজ পার হওয়া, এর মধ্য দিয়ে যে একদম প্র্যাকটিক্যাল ডেইলি লাইফ তারা উদযাপন করেছে, তার ভিতর থেকে আসলে এই থিওরিগুলো বেরিয়ে এসছে। এটা একেবারেই জীবন থেকে বিচ্যুত কোনো ব্যাপার নয়। কিন্তু কি ঘটে, আমরা যখন আমাদের এখানে ওই থিওরিগুলো পড়ছি, তখন তার সঙ্গে তো আমাদের বাস্তব জীবনের কোনো মিল নেই। আমরা তো সেই জীবনটা আসলে যাপন করছি না, সেই জীবন যাপন করার প্রশ্নই আসে না, কারণ আমরা ওই ক্যাপিটালিস্টিক মুডের ভিতর দিয়ে যাই নাই, আসলে ওই প্রোডাকশন রিলেশনের ভিতর দিয়ে যায় নাই, ফলে ওই হিউম্যান রিলেশনের ভিতর দিয়ে যায় নাই। সো এভরিথিং ইজ রিলেটেড টু হিউম্যান রিলেশন বেসিক্যালি। তো হিউম্যান রিলেশনের যদি ওই স্তরটা না থাকে, তাহলে হাউ উই ক্যান এক্সপেক্ট দ্য প্র্যাকটিক্যাল গ্রাউন্ড অফ থিওরিজ হিয়ার in the one of the poorest areas, poorest urbanity, urban cultures in fact of the world. এটা কিভাবে সম্ভব হবে? সো আমি মনে করি যে এই প্রবলেমটা সলভ করা আমাদের জন্য খুব বেশি জটিল নয়। আমরা যদি ওই থিওরির ব্যাপারটাকে থিওরি হিসেবে না দেখে এটাকে যদি প্র্যাকটিক্যালিটির সঙ্গে মিলাতে পারি, প্র্যাকটিক্যালিটি ইন টু সেন্সেস হিয়ার অ্যাজ দ্য কোয়েশ্চেন ওয়াজ রেজড। ইন ওয়ান সেন্স, আমরা তো ডেইলি জীবনযাপন করি, ওই ডেইলি জীবনযাপনটা একটা খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ব্যাপার। ডেইলি জীবনযাপনের সঙ্গে আমরা যদি আমাদের এই ব্যাপারগুলোকে মিলিয়ে নিতে পারি, তাহলে আমাদের প্রবলেমটা আসলে অনেক কম হবে। আমরা এই পাজলের মধ্যে পড়বো না, ইটস বেসিক্যালি পাজল। কয়েক বছর আগে আমি একটা লেখা অনুবাদ করেছিলাম, খুব পপুলার লেখা, ক্রিস্টিনা বারবারার রেস ফর থিওরি এই বলে একটা লেখা। আমি এটা অনুবাদ করেছিলাম এবং এটার নাম দিয়েছিলাম, বাংলা নাম দিয়েছিলাম তত্ত্ববাজি। কারণ তত্ত্বের ব্যাপারে সেখানে একটা খুবই নেগেটিভ অ্যাটিচিউড ছিল। অ্যাটিচিউড থাকার কারণ হলো বারবারা ক্রিস্টিন একজন ব্ল্যাক ওমেন। তো বুঝতেই পারছেন যে মডার্নিস্ট এইজে যেটাকে আমরা বলি যে হোয়াইট মেল সেন্ট্রিক একটা ব্যাপার, ইটস নট অ্যান্থ্রোপোসেন্ট্রিক বেসিক্যালি, ইটস হোয়াইট মেল সেন্ট্রিক একটা ব্যাপার। সেখানে বারবারা ক্রিস্টিনা যে একজন ক্রিয়েটিভ রাইটার, যে ইংরেজি সাহিত্য পড়া আমেরিকার কোনো ইউনিভার্সিটিতে, ব্ল্যাক অ্যান্ড ওম্যান, সে খুবই থ্রেটেন্ড বোধ করছে যে সারা মানে মডার্ন এইজে 300 বছর ধরে ইউরোপীয়রা, আমেরিকারা, হোয়াইট মেলরা, বেসিক্যালি মেলরা এবং ফিমেল অলসো ওয়ার্ক ইন ফেভার অফ মেল, উই নো, তারা লিটারেচার করেছে এবং তখন লিটারেচার খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ছিল। তারা টেক্সটে খুব গুরুত্ব দিয়েছে, তারা লিটারারি ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজকে এবং টেক্সটকে এবং কালচারকে খুব গুরুত্ব দিয়েছে। এখন যখন থার্ড ওয়ার্ল্ডের লোকরা ভালো সাহিত্য করছে, আফ্রিকা, লাতিন আমেরিকা, এশিয়ার লোকরা ভালো সাহিত্য করছে, ব্ল্যাকরা ভালো সাহিত্য করছে, ওমেনরা ভালো সাহিত্য করছে, তখন হোয়াইট মেলরা বলছে যে নো, উই ডোন্ট নিড লিটারেচার এনি মোর, উই নিড থিওরি। ঠিক আছে, ও সাংঘাতিক ক্ষিপ্ত হয়েছে যে আমি এসবের মধ্যে নাই, এটা একটা পাজল, আমি এর মধ্যে নাই। কারণ লিটারেরি ক্রিয়েটিভ ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ, বোথ পোয়েটিক অ্যান্ড ফিকশনাল, will facilitate us, we the peripheral people, black, women, থার্ড ওয়ার্ল্ডস, আফ্রিকা, লাতিন আমেরিকা, এশিয়া, আমাদেরকে তারা সুবিধা দেয়, আমাদেরকে এই ভাষাটা সুবিধা দেয়, ক্রিয়েটিভ ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটা সুবিধা দেয় যে আমাদের যে এক্সিস্টেন্স অ্যান্ড অ্যান্টিটি, এটাকে অ্যাজ সাস প্রকাশ করতে সুবিধা দেয়। এখন যখন আমরা আমাদের নিজেদেরকে নিয়ে হাজির হয়েছি সেই ময়দানে, তখন ওরা বলছে যে না, তোমরা আর এগুলো করো না, তোমরা এখন থিওরি করো। ফলে এই ব্যাপারে আমাদের অবশ্যই সাবধান থাকতে হবে এবং একই সঙ্গে আমাদের সাবধান থাকতে হবে, বারবারা ক্রিস্টিনা কথাটা বলে যে আমেরিকায় বসে আর আমরা এখানে আলাপ করছি আসলে সাভারের বিরুলি ইউনিয়নে। আমি দেখলাম যে আমার উবার ভাড়া বেশি নিল, কারণ এটা ঢাকার বাইরে। ঠিক আছে, সো আমাদের ওই ব্যাপারটা যদি আমরা মনে রাখি যে আমরা আসলে প্র্যাকটিক্যাল লাইফে আছি এবং প্র্যাকটিক্যাল লাইফের সঙ্গে টেক্সট সম্পর্কিত এবং টেক্সটের জন্য আমরা আসলে থিওরি ব্যবহার করছি, তাহলে আর আসলে খুব বেশি প্রবলেম হবে না। এই ব্যাপারে আমি যে উদাহরণটা ব্যবহার করি সেই উদাহরণটা হলো পার্থ চট্টোপাধ্যায় অ্যান্ড মেনি থিওরিটিশিয়ান ফ্রম ইন্ডিয়ান অরিজিন, ফেমাস ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়াইড, তারা একটা আইডিয়া প্রপাগেট করেছে যেটা আমি পিক করেছি আমার নিজের প্রয়োজনে। সেটা হলো আওয়ার মডার্নিটি। আওয়ার মডার্নিটি এবং মডার্নিটিকে ডিজোন করে রাখার কোনো অবস্থা আসলে আমাদের নাই, কারণ আমরা গত অনেক বছর ধরে, শত শত বছর ধরে আসলে এর ভিতর দিয়ে গেছি। আমি দীপেশ চক্রবর্তীর এই কথাটা খুব ভালোভাবে সাবস্ক্রাইব করি, যেখানে দীপেশ চক্রবর্তী বলছেন যে 200 বছর ধরে কয়েক জেনারেশনে আমরা ওয়েস্টার্নাইজড একটা এডুকেশন সিস্টেম, কালচারাল সিস্টেম অ্যান্ড লিভিং সিস্টেম অ্যান্ড অ্যাটিটিউডের মধ্যে বসবাস করছি। আর কতদিন লাগবে যে এটা আমাদের না বা আমাদের হতে, আর কতদিন লাগবে বেসিক্যালি? আমি মনে করি দীপেশ চক্রবর্তীর এই কথা ঠিক, এবং পার্থ চট্টোপাধ্যায়, প্রথমা মণ্ডল, সুদীপ্ত কবিরাজ, এরা দীর্ঘদিন ধরে যে কথা প্রস্তাব করে যাচ্ছেন যে উই শুড ফাইন্ড আউট আওয়ার মডার্নিটি বেসিক্যালি, গিভেন দ্যাট আমরা আসলে একটা মডার্ন লাইফের মধ্যে আমাদের মতো করে জীবনযাপন করেছেন প্র্যাকটিক্যাল লাইফ, আমরা আসলে মডার্ন জীবনের কতগুলো ধরনও আবিষ্কার করেছি। ফলে আমরা যদি আমাদের এই প্র্যাকটিক্যাল লাইফকে, ডেইলি লাইফকে কেন্দ্র করে আমরা যদি চিন্তাগুলো করতে পারি, তাহলে আমাদের জন্য মডার্নিটি, পোস্ট মডার্নিটি কিংবা থিওরিজ আর বিশেষ কোনো সমস্যা হয়ে দাঁড়াবে না। জাস্ট আমি যেমন ব্যাখ্যা করেছিলাম, আপনারা জানেন যে মডার্নিটির একটা অন্যতম প্রধান টেক্সট হিসেবে বিবেচিত হয় 1784-এর কান্টের বিখ্যাত প্রবন্ধ হোয়াট ইজ এনলাইটেনমেন্ট, যেখানে তিনি বলেছিলেন যে মডার্নিটি কি, আসলে ঠিক মডার্নিটি বলেন না, তিনি বলেছেন এনলাইটেনমেন্ট। এনলাইটেনমেন্ট কি, তিনি বলছেন ইটস ম্যাচুরিটি। হোয়াট ইজ ম্যাচুরিটি? ম্যাচুরিটি যে আপনি অন্য কারো অভিভাবকত্ব ছাড়া নিজের কন্ডিশন থেকে নিজের চিন্তাটা করতে পারেন। সো আমি পার্থ চট্টোপাধ্যায় এবং কানকে ব্যবহার করে এরকম বলেছিলাম যে বাংলাদেশে আমরা আসলে মডার্নিটিটা যখন বিশ্রাবো, মডার্নিটিটা যখন আমরা অন্বেষণ করবো, থিওরাইজ করবো, তখন আমাদের স্টেপ এটাই দেখতে হবে যে আমরা আমাদের কন্ডিশনকে ব্যাখ্যা করার জন্য নিজেদের অবলম্বন করার মতো ম্যাচিউর কি হয়েছি না হই নাই। যদি হই তাহলে এটা একটা ফ্যালাসি, তাহলে আমি আর ইউরোপীয় মডার্নিটির সূত্রাবলী আসলে হুবহু আমার উপর প্রয়োগ করতে পারবো না। আর যদি না হই তাহলে আমরা অ্যাকর্ডিং টু কান্ট আমরা মডার্নই হই নাই। সো যেটা আপনি বলেছেন যে টেক্সটের ক্ষেত্রে আসলে তাহলে আমাদের ব্যাপারটা কি দাঁড়াবে, আমার মনে হয় এটা খুব জটিল ব্যাপার নয়। জটিল ব্যাপার নয় এই অর্থে যে আমরা যদি এটা বুঝতে পারি যে টেক্সট, ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ এই ব্যাপারগুলো জীবন নিয়ে কাজ করে, হিউম্যান লাইফ। অ্যানথ্রোপোসেন্ট্রিজম সম্পর্কে আমার খুব বেশি আপত্তি নাই, এই অর্থে যে মানুষ তো সাংঘাতিক অ্যানথ্রোপোসেন্ট্রিক বটেই, কিন্তু এখন যে মানুষ আবার প্রাণী, উদ্ভিদ এগুলোর ব্যাপারে খুবই চিন্তিত হয়ে পড়েছে, আমি মনে করিয়ে দিই যে সেটাও কিন্তু আবার অন্যরকম অ্যানথ্রোপোসেন্ট্রিসিজমেরই ফল। কারণ মানুষ এসে বুঝতে পেরেছে এখন যে সে প্রাণী জগৎ এবং প্রকৃতির উপর মারাত্মকভাবে কর্তৃত্বপরায়ণ হওয়ার মধ্য দিয়ে এমন শর্ত তৈরি করেছে যে তার নিজেরই অনতিবিলম্বে বিলয় ঘটতে যাচ্ছে। সো ইটস অ্যানাদার সর্ট অফ অ্যানথ্রোপোসেন্ট্রিক অ্যাটিটিউডস। কিন্তু পোস্ট মডার্ন বা পোস্ট ট্রুথ চিন্তার সুবিধা হলো এই যে এখানে আমার একটা সিঙ্গেল অবস্থান আসলে লাগে না, আমি আসলে এরকম কতগুলো পাশাপাশি অনেকগুলো গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ট্রুথ রেখে আসলে এক্সিস্ট করতে পারি। ঠিক সেই ধরনের কোনো টেক্সট পড়ার সময় আমি যদি বিচার করি যে এটা আসলে জীবনের প্রতিফলন, আই এম ডিলিং উইথ লাইফ, তাহলে আমার প্রবলেম অনেক কম হবে। এবং তখন আমি দেখব যে থিওরিগুলোকে আমি আসলে সুবিধা মতো অপেক্ষাকৃত গভীর এবং অপেক্ষাকৃত বিশদ বিশ্লেষণের জন্য ব্যবহার করতে পারছি। আমাদের ভুলে গেলে চলবে না, আর দুটো কথা বলে আমি শেষ করব, আমাদের ভুলে গেলে চলবে না যে এই যে থিওরির প্রচণ্ডতা, প্রবলতা, এই ব্যাপার আবির্ভূত হয়েছিল 1960s-এ, যখন ইংলিশ লিটারেরি টেক্সট বা অপরাপর সোশ্যাল সায়েন্সের বিষয়গুলো পড়ার জন্য বিপুল পরিমাণ ছাত্রছাত্রী ভিড় করেছিল হোয়াইট মেল ইউরোসেন্ট্রিক স্টকের বাইরে থেকে, ফিমেল থেকে, ব্ল্যাক থেকে, থার্ড ওয়ার্ল্ড থেকে সংখ্যা অনেক বেড়ে গিয়েছিল। এবং তারা অ্যাট ওয়ান্স আবিষ্কার করেছিল যে তারা যা পড়ছে সেগুলোতে আইদার তারা নাই অথবা তারা মিস রিপ্রেজেন্টেড। আমাদের এটা ভুলে গেলে চলবে না যে থিওরির যে প্রচণ্ডতার মধ্যে আমরা এখন পীড়াবোধ করছি সেটা আসলে এই ধরনের একটা ব্যাপার থেকে শুরু হয়েছিল এবং সেটা আমাদের জন্য সাংঘাতিক রকম উপকারী। এবং আমি দীর্ঘদিন ধরে বলে আসছি যে আমি একটা পোস্ট কলোনিয়াল, পোস্ট মডার্ন জাংচারের মধ্যে আসলে আমার ক্যারিয়ার শুরু করেছিলাম অ্যাজ এ লিটারারি ক্রিটিক। এবং আমি লিটারেচার পড়তে পছন্দ করি ইউজিং সো মেনি থিংস লাইক সেমিওটিক্স, লাইক ডিসকোর্স অ্যানালাইসিস, লাইক নিউ হিস্ট্রিক্যাল অ্যাটিটিউডস, লাইক কালচারাল স্টাডিজ অ্যান্ড সো মেনি আদার্স। এবং আই ফিল ফাইন, আমার সুবিধা হয় যে আমি লিটারেচারকে বিচিত্র আসপেক্ট থেকে দেখতে পারি এবং এটা আমার জন্য একটা অলওয়েজ একটা পসিবিলিটি। সো যখন আমি আমার লিটারেরি টেক্সটকে আমি দেখতে পারবো আমার জীবনের সঙ্গে মিলিয়ে, ভাষার সঙ্গে মিলিয়ে, যখন আমি থিওরির বশীভূত হব না, যখন থিওরি আমার উপর কর্তৃত্ব করতে পারবে না, তখন আসলে এই কোনো ব্যাপারই আসলে কোনো ধরনের প্রবলেম হবে না, প্রবলেম তৈরি করবে না। অ্যান্ড মোর ওভার, যেটা বারবার বলা হয়েছে, যে আমাদের খেয়াল রাখতে হবে যে থিওরিগুলো উদ্ভূত হয়েছে একটা সম্পূর্ণ ভিন্ন পার্সপেক্টিভে, এবং তার প্রধান প্র্যাকটিসগুলো সম্পূর্ণ ভিন্ন পার্সপেক্টিভে হয়েছে। আমরা এখন যেখানে আমরা যেই বাস্তবতার মধ্যে আছি, সেই বাস্তবতার মধ্যে প্র্যাকটিসটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ রাদার দেন থিওরি।
Professor Azam was talking about authority, kortitobadita. We English teachers, what do you do in the classroom basically? I mean, students who come in the English department, most of them, I would straightforwardly say, are poor in English. And they think that they come in the English department just to learn English, as like Saifur Shahidullah sir says. So they will suddenly learn English, and I would be like teachers of ciphers. But paradox is that they get shocked. They find out all literature and theory. And we become kortitobadi. We take the authority, we take the charge. How do you deal it in the classroom? What should be the way actually? What is the solution here?
I'm very happy for one thing. Everybody is in the same line, from the first keynote speaker to the last one. Everybody is talking about critically, judging everything. And when Shahidullah sir was talking about post method, he was actually talking about practicing what we theorize and theorizing what we practice. That is, practicality is very important. And then Azam bhai finally actually was talking about eclectic approach to theories, so that we can get the best out of all the theories, but contextualize all those things. And I am very happy for the spirited lady, Nazia Manjur, Dr. Nazia Manjur. I am very happy that we are actually thinking in the same line. But one thing I was lamenting, that perhaps we have not been and still we are perhaps not searching, but we are just looking up to them. That was I lamenting. I was lamenting in the tune of Shumon, Kabir Shumon, when he was saying, Prane gan nei miche tai Robi Thakur murti gora. I was actually lamenting that, nothing else. It is not like that. I'm not finding postmodernity positive. Rather, strongly I feel that when I connect postmodernity to postcoloniality, then it is the greatest strength for us to redefine ourselves, reconceptualize our context, and rebuild, reinterpret ourselves, us. And we're doing the same thing. The question is, for me, the question was about the student's expectation and our authoritarian approach to the student, and what should be the solution. Actually, there is no solution, a single solution. What the keynote speaker, Dr. M. Shahidullah sir said, that unless and until it can be through the experiences of the man who is conducting the sessions, comes the methods, strategies, it is not possible to solve, because every situation is unique. So the solution is to be a continuous student on the part of the teacher, who will observe, analyze, and try to find out the ways and means with insights from the existing methods and approaches, and then he will develop his own approach to address the students. Unless and until we be like that, it is not possible. But the question is, we are after a livelihood, we are after a job, we are after with our family, social need, and a lot of people are looking up to us. We have to satisfy everyone. We need to be more and more dedicated to all these works. It's not simply possible. So I do feel that the discrepancies lies in the fact of when Shahidullah sir was saying that all those methods were coming out of the ideal situation. And again, if one of the teachers, frame this kind of method, and he or she will, make it through her situation, then what will, is it applicable for me? That is the basic question. So if every teacher is the method maker, then only solution is there. Otherwise, you cannot treat all the students in the similar manner. You cannot solve the problem. So let's hope for the best with the spirit of the only lady on the dais, on the stage. we will have our own type of methods with all the insights from the existing one, and hopefully we'll solve the problems. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So teachers need to be very good observer, right? And just they need to be participant observers, and then they can actually understand what to do, not to do. There is no permanent solution for that. So my question is to Shakwat that, this is the era of Facebook. And students study in the Facebook, teachers too. And classroom, sometimes our conversation, our socialization is taken away from us. It's all through the Facebook, the very virtual world, the very hyper-real world. So do you think that is communication really happening among us through this book? This is a book, this is a text too. So how do you see this hypertext in this context, in this post-truth world?
I understand there are people out there who are critiquing a platform like Facebook, that if people have nothing to do, what do? They probably, post a status there, and only that's what they're doing. As if that's an end in itself. But when I look at Facebook or the posts there, I feel that Facebook posts are actually taking us down to the streets as well. So to talk about, remember the Ganojagaran Moncho, and there are many other events, Shahbag movement and all that. So these all started, I believe, from these social networking platforms, right? So contrary to many others, I would say Facebook is not actually all negative, all bad. It is also one more platform that I would say is empowering us, right? Before the introduction of these platforms, I think human beings had two lives. One, life on earth, and the other, life after death. I don't know if you'll agree with me. But now, after the introduction of these social networking platforms, I think human beings have three lives. Number one, life on earth. We breathe, right? Number two, life on the internet or in the internet, right? And I think life in the internet is as true as life on earth. So people are posting their updates, pictures, exactly at the same time. And the third life that we have successfully, after the successful creation of the second life, life in the internet or life on the internet, life after death has become our third life. So I don't know how many lives are waiting out there, but I see Facebook or the other social networking sites as a great source of optimism too. I understand probably a platform like that is initially not that active, but it is certainly and definitely taking us down to the streets at times. There is no denying. So that's how I look at it. I see great hope there as well.
Ajam sir, on that point, how do you see it?
ওকে, আমি প্রযুক্তির ক্ষেত্রে আমি একজন বেঞ্জামিনিয়ান। ওয়াল্টার বেঞ্জামিন আমার কাছে এই ব্যাপারে প্রায় আইডিয়ালের মতো, যিনি সিনেমার আবির্ভাবের ফলে সিনেমাকে সবচেয়ে দ্রুত অ্যাকসেপ্ট করে পুরো অ্যাস্থেটিক্সটা চেঞ্জ করে দিয়েছিলেন, যে এটা আর কখনো অ্যাস্থেটিক্স কখনো আর পিছন দিকে ফিরে যাবে না, এটা এইভাবেই পারসিভড হবে। ওই যে প্রযুক্তি আসলে আমাদের জীবনের পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরকে চেঞ্জ করে দেন, সেটা তিনি দুর্দান্তভাবে ব্যাখ্যা করেছিলেন। ফেসবুক এবং ইউটিউব কিংবা সোশ্যাল মিডিয়া কিংবা ইন্টারনেট এই ব্যাপারগুলোর ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের অ্যাট ফার্স্ট আমাদের মনে রাখতে হবে যে এটা ভালো কিংবা খারাপ কোনো ব্যাপার নয়, ইটস এ কন্ডিশন। এটা হলো এক। আর দ্বিতীয় হলো যে এটা আমাদের পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরকে সাংঘাতিকভাবে পরিবর্তিত করে দেয়। তো পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরের পরিবর্তন করার দুটো প্রধান কারণ। একটা হলো যে আমরা যখন ভাষাকে কমিউনিকেট করি তখন আমাদের মাঝখানে একটা শক্ত ইমাজিনেশনের পর্ব থাকে। আমাদের অনেক কিছু ইমাজিন করতে হয়, আমাদের অনেক কিছু পারমুটেশন কম্বিনেশনের মধ্য দিয়ে আমাদের একটা পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরের একটা জার্নির মধ্য দিয়ে যেতে হয়। কিন্তু যখন আমরা ভিজুয়াল ইমেজ দেখি, ফিক্সড হোক কিংবা মুভি হোক, তখন আমাদের পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরটা মারাত্মকভাবে পরিবর্তিত হয়। আমরা যখন ভিজুয়ালাইজ করি কোনো কিছু, তখন ওই যে ইমাজিনেশনের যে পর্বটা কিংবা পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরের একটা লম্বা পারমুটেশন কম্বিনেশনের যে পর্বটা আমরা কোনো একটা লেখা পড়লে, কোনো একটা ফিকশন পড়লে কিংবা কবিতা পড়লে যার মধ্য দিয়ে আমাদের যেতে হয়, সেটা আসলে ভিজুয়াল ইমেজের ক্ষেত্রে ওইভাবে ঘটে না, এটা সম্পূর্ণ ভিন্নভাবে ঘটে। আর ফেসবুকে কিংবা সোশ্যাল মিডিয়াতে আমরা আরেকটা দেখি হলো মতামত। সো এটা হলো দুটো জিনিসের রাজত্ব। একটা হলো ইমেজ আইদার ফিক্সড আর মুভিং, আর একটা হলো মতামত। এই মতামতের ব্যাপারটাও আমাদের পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরকে মারাত্মকভাবে প্রভাবিত করে। অ্যানালাইসিসের বদলে কিংবা একটা লম্বা একটা বিশ্লেষণ করে করে একটা সিদ্ধান্ত নেওয়ার বদলে আমরা অনবরত মত উৎপাদন করি। এই মতের যে পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউর আর একটা বিশ্লেষণের যে পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউর, এই দুটো আলাদা। সো আমি মনে করি যে এখন
এই যে অনবরত মতামত বদল,
there are lots of images, মানে আপনি কিছুতে কনসেন্ট্রেট করতে পারছেন না, আপনি কনসেন্ট্রেট করতে পারছেন না। সো আমি মনে করি যে এটা ভালো কিংবা খারাপ নয়, আমি মনে করি এটা আমাদের একটা ভিন্ন কন্ডিশনের মধ্যে নিয়ে ফেলেছে। এখন দুটো ব্যাপার হতে পারে। একটা হলো যে আমরা যখন লিটারেচার ক্লাসে পড়বো কিংবা কোনো টেক্সট পড়বো কিংবা কোনো অ্যানালিটিক্যাল জিনিস পড়বো, তখন আমাদেরকে আসলে একটা খুব শক্ত বাস্তবতার মধ্য দিয়ে যেতে হয়, যে এই বাস্তবতার মধ্যে, এই পারসেপশন প্রসিডিউরের মধ্যে অভ্যস্ত আমাদের ছাত্রছাত্রী কিংবা এমনকি আমরা নিজেরাও ওই টেক্সটের মধ্যে প্রবেশ করব কিভাবে, সেটা একটা বিরাট ঝুঁকির ব্যাপার এবং সেটা আমাদেরকে আসলে এই লড়াইটা করতে হয়। কিন্তু একই সঙ্গে এটার অন্য নানান ধরনের পসিবিলিটিসও আছে। সেই পসিবিলিটিস হলো যে আমরা যে কোনো টেক্সটকে আসলে এখন বিচিত্র ফর্মে রূপান্তর করতে পারি। আমরা ওরাল টেক্সট হিসেবে রূপান্তর করতে পারি, আমরা ইমেজ হিসেবে রূপান্তর করতে পারি, আমরা বিচিত্র ধরনের সেমিনার, সিম্পোজিয়াম ইত্যাদি আকারে রূপান্তর করে আমরা স্টুডেন্টদের কাছে আসলে পৌঁছাতে পারি বা নিজেরাও সেটা পারসিভ করতে পারি। ফলে আমরা এই পরিবর্তিত পরিস্থিতির কথা মাথায় রেখে আমরা যদি টেক্সটকে, রিটেন টেক্সটকে যদি নানানভাবে ভাইটালাইজ করতে পারি এবং রিপ্রোডাকশন প্রসিডিউরের মধ্যে যদি আমরা যদি বিভিন্নভাবে সেটা উপস্থাপন করতে পারি, তাহলে আমার মনে হয় যে নতুন কন্ডিশনের সঙ্গে আমরা একই সঙ্গে খাপ খাওয়াতে পারবো এবং সেটাকে অধিকতর প্রোডাক্টিভলি আমরা ব্যবহার করতে পারবো।
So basically we are running out of time, so I hope that the answer would be short. I don't know. And the question must be short. Maybe I am asking the long questions. That's the problem. So it demands long answer. I mean, Nazia, the women voice in the novel. I mean the local narratives, the minor narratives. It's not coming out. We don't see that much. Minor characters are not getting priority, but minor characters are very important, and women are, most of the cases, minor character in the text, and of course in life too, in most of the cases. I mean, how do you see it, especially in Bangladesh? Do you find, I have read Bangladeshi novels, and I have said that I have seen that women are always oppressed there. But where is the women who is very strong enough, who is just striding in the street, who is extravagant? Always the picture of oppression is there. How do you see it? What is your opinion, basically?
If I could connect a couple of things that was already said. One, we were talking about the possibilities and potentialities of social media space. And there is absolutely no denying that great change, great positive change has happened through social media, amader context, like in Bangladesh. There's absolutely no denying it. And there is yet another side to the story. in the medieval ages, women were sometimes labeled as witches and they would be burned in the town square, right? You know, there would be like a space in the middle of the town where somebody would be, a woman particularly, she's a witch, so she will be burned and there will be a large audience gathered to watch that burning. The comment section of Facebook in Bangladesh is the new town square, where women's bodies and their identities and their very selfhood regularly gets burned to crisp. There is no space in Bangladesh that is women friendly, and the internet is another example of that. Whatever used to happen on the streets have multiplied by 1 million, and it now takes place in Facebook in the comment section. So while I am hopeful, I am also wary. As a woman, as just a regular woman, I'm wary and I'm tired of being unsafe and unprotected on social media spaces, as well as in the public place. So that's one side of the Facebook conversation or the social media conversation. About the other, about the representation of women in texts, I do not claim to know a lot about texts that I am not teaching currently, because I don't know about you all, but my brain, I feel, is a little myopic at times. Like, I only remember what I'm doing right now, and I don't remember what has happened in the past. Bura hoye jacchi, basically. So when I design my syllabi, I have a very specific pedagogical principle. I will not spend a whole semester teaching dead white men. I will not. My syllabi will have, if not equal, ample representation of women, women of color, people from elsewhere that are not from the Euro-American space, people who bring an alternative to the existing discourse, people who can challenge the supremacy or the hegemony of whiteness and Euro-Western ideas and ideologies. And one might argue that how are you going to teach, let's say, the 19th century novel, the Austens and the Brontes, without, how are you going to challenge that status quo? It's a bunch of dead white women and dead white men writing those texts. The answer is you include criticisms written by women like us, by writers who are writing from elsewhere. So for every text on T.S. Eliot, I don't know why we're talking about him too much today. Somehow he's like the modern dude for us. For every T.S. Eliot text, I will make sure that we're reading something written by someone who counteracts that. One of my favorite pairings when it comes to the modernism class, we teach Mrs. Dalloway. This semester, my students were a little unhappy with Mrs. Dalloway's white woman problems. That, she is privileged, she is rich, she's from the aristocracy, and what seems to be the problem in her life? My students were asking, and I was like, existential ennui. And they were giving me this look, like, why do we care? Fair question. But I pair the text with an essay by Sarah Ahmed, and that's called Willfulness. It's about the joy of willfulness. And that's, it's a brilliant essay where she sort of sketches the entire history, not the entire, but a significant chunk of modern history of women's unhappiness in text. Have we heard the term killjoy feminism? Do we know what that is? Super briefly, have you ever been the woman or a man who's hanging out with a group of people, and there's a lot of happy-gappy chatter is happening where like casual misogyny is thrown in the mix, casual sexism is thrown in the mix, and you are the one person that says, excuse me, please don't make a rape joke. Have you ever been that person? Right? I think you have, some of you. That person who says, bhai, ebhabe bolan na, eta ekটু kharap, like, that's sexist, don't say that. You are a killjoy. You're killing the joy, right? Sarah Ahmed defines it as killjoy feminism, like at the dining table, the family member gathers and everyone's talking about, are meder kapor, blah, blah. And then someone says that, let's not talk about clothes. In that essay, Ahmed says, the killjoy feminism of Mrs. Dalloway is what makes her relevant today. She refuses to be full of joy. And she is the bearer of unhappiness. And if we trace the history of unhappiness that we have seen in contemporary and modern postmodern fiction, we will be able to link it to the lived experience of being a woman. And the lived experience of being a woman, I'm generalizing, is laced with unhappiness. Unhappiness is woven into the very fabric of being a woman, the lived experience of it. And so I cannot detach femininity from my teaching pedagogy, and I refuse to detach femininity or feminism from my work. I don't know if that answers your question.
This is the last question, Humayun Ahmed, and your area maybe say, he's popular to students, popular to everyone, the pop culture things, and of course the post-truth, and he has broken the grand narratives, entered into the local narratives. So সেই হুমায়ুন আহমেদ একাডেমিতে নাই আসলে, হুমায়ুন আহমেদকে হয়তো বা পড়ানো হবে না, সেখানে হয়তো বা আমরা মানিক বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায়কে নিয়ে থাকবো, বা হয়তো বা ইংরেজি সাহিত্যে আমরা যাদেরকে নিয়ে থাকি, বড় বড় লেখক টি.এস. এলিয়টের কথা, বা হুমায়ুন আহমেদের জরুরিটা যদি সংক্ষেপে একটু আমাদেরকে বলে দেন, আদৌ কি জরুরি বা জরুরি না?
আচ্ছা, ওকে, এটা হলো আমি হুমায়ুন আহমেদ, আমি জানি না এখনকার আজকাল যারা ছাত্রছাত্রী আছে তারা হুমায়ুন আহমেদ পড়ে কিনা, এখন হয়তো পড়ে না। ও অনেকে পড়ে, আচ্ছা ওকে, সেটা ভালো। আমি হুমায়ুন আহমেদ নিয়ে কিছু কাজ করেছি এবং একটা বই প্রকাশ করেছি, সেটা আরিফ সাহেব জানেন, আমাদের উপস্থাপক জানেন, এবং তিনি সেটার ব্যাপারে কিছু কথা বলতে বলেছেন। আমার ধারণা সেটা আমাদের আজকের আলোচনার জন্য খুবই প্রাসঙ্গিক। আমরা জানি যে ইটস অল অ্যাবাউট হাই আর্ট অ্যান্ড পপ আর্ট। আমরা জানি যে 19th সেঞ্চুরি পর্যন্ত পপ আর্ট বা পপুলার আর্টকে অ্যাড্রেস করার কোনো কায়দা আসলে আমাদের ভদ্র সমাজের জানা ছিল না, ইউনিভার্সিটিগুলোর জানা ছিল না। প্রশ্নটা একভাবে প্রথম তুলেছিল ফ্রাঙ্কফুর্ট স্কুল, তারা কালচার ইন্ডাস্ট্রি এবং পপুলার কালচারের ব্যাপারে খুবই বামপন্থী দৃষ্টিকোণ থেকে, মার্ক্সীয় দৃষ্টিকোণ থেকে তারা খুবই তাৎপর্যপূর্ণ কিছু প্রশ্ন তুলেছিল, যদিও তাদের আলোচনার মধ্যেও খুব এলিটিজমের ব্যাপারগুলো ছিল। আমি সম্প্রতি এই ব্যাপারগুলো ডিল করতে গিয়ে খানিকটা হয়তো আগে যা জানতাম বা শুনেছিলাম সেই তুলনায় খানিকটা হতাশই হয়েছিলাম খানিকটা, কিন্তু তারা গুরুত্বের সঙ্গে প্রশ্নগুলো তুলেছিল। কিন্তু ওই যে বলেছিলাম 1960s পরে আসলে ব্যাপারগুলো ব্যাপকভাবে পরিবর্তিত হয়েছে, এবং যে কোনো ধরনের আর্টিস্টিক রিপ্রেজেন্টেশনের ক্ষেত্রে রিপ্রেজেন্টেশন কথাটা সেন্টার হয়ে উঠেছে, যে কিভাবে একটা ব্যাপারকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করা হয়, এবং ইন্ডিভিজুয়ালের তুলনায়, সাবলিমিটির তুলনায়, ব্যক্তির আধিপত্যের তুলনায় ক্লাস কিংবা কালচার কিংবা ইডিওলজি, এই ব্যাপারগুলোর নিরিখে অনেক গভীরভাবে যে আমরা টেক্সট পড়তে পারি এবং সেক্ষেত্রে অপেক্ষাকৃত বেশি ইফেক্টিভ রিডিংয়ে পৌঁছাতে পারি, এই আইডিয়াগুলো থিওরিটিক্যালি 1960s পরে মানুষ আস্তে আস্তে অ্যাডপ্ট করতে শিখেছে। এবং তার ফলে আমরা দেখি যে গত 40-50 বছর ধরে হলিউড ইন্ডাস্ট্রি কিংবা সারা পৃথিবীর পপুলার সিনেমা নিয়ে দুর্দান্ত সব টেক্সট রচিত হয়েছে, এবং আজকালকার যারা বড় ফিলোসোফার এদের একজনকেও আপনারা দেখবেন না যারা সিনেমার রেফারেন্স দেয়া ছাড়া একটা পৃষ্ঠা লেখে, নট এ সিঙ্গেল পেজ ইনফ্যাক্ট, কাউকেই না। তো এই যে পপুলার লিটারেচারকে ব্যাখ্যা করার জন্য যে পদ্ধতিগুলো, এগুলো আমাদের এখানে ঢাকায় একেবারেই ফ্লাওয়ারিশ করে না। এটা তার কলোনিয়াল অভিজ্ঞতার কারণেই সাংঘাতিক রকম এলিটিস্টিক, এবং সে জনপ্রিয়তাকে ভীষণভাবে ভয় পায়। আমি এটা নিয়ে বহুবার ডিল করেছি নজরুল প্রসঙ্গে এবং অন্যদের প্রসঙ্গে, যে জনপ্রিয়তা তার কাছে খুবই একটা খারাপ জিনিস, এবং জনপ্রিয় সাহিত্যকে সে সাহিত্য হিসেবে অ্যাট ফার্স্ট স্বীকারই করতে চায় না। এবং এটা যে অ্যানালাইজ করার বিচিত্র প্রণালী পদ্ধতি, অ্যাপিস্টেমোলজি এখন আমাদের হাতে আছে, এই ব্যাপারটা আসলে আমাদের এখানে খুব বেশি চাউ রয় নাই। সেদিক থেকে আমি হুমায়ুন আহমেদকে পড়তে চেয়েছি আসলে বিভিন্ন পদ্ধতিতে। এমনিতে আমি মনে করি যে হুমায়ুনের বেশ কিছু লেখা আছে যেগুলো হাই আর্ট হিসেবে খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট, সেটা হলো আমার একটা পয়েন্ট। সেকেন্ড পয়েন্ট হলো হুমায়ুন আমি মনে করি যে পপুলার লিটারেচার হিসেবে সারা পৃথিবীতেই আসলে খুবই উল্লেখযোগ্য, কারণ তার হাতে এতগুলো জনরা ছিল, কলাকৌশল ছিল, যেটা এককভাবে দুনিয়ার পপুলার লেখকদের মধ্যে প্রায় কারোর মধ্যেই দেখা যায় না। আমরা পপুলার লেখকদের কথা জানি, ওরা একটা দুইটা জনরাই আসলে সারা জীবন কাজ করে, কিন্তু হুমায়ুন আহমেদ কাজ করেছেন কমপক্ষে এরকম প্রধান 10টা জনরা নিয়ে, যেগুলো প্রত্যেকটাই পপুলার হওয়ার জন্য যথেষ্ট ছিল এককভাবে। এরপরে আমি দেখাতে চেয়েছি যে আসলে বাংলাদেশের মিডল ক্লাসকে যদি আমরা পড়তে চাই, তাহলে হুমায়ুন আহমেদ একটা দুর্দান্ত মাধ্যম হতে পারে, কারণ হুমায়ুন আহমেদ আরবান মিডল ক্লাস কমন সাইকি, কমন আনকনশাসকে যত ভালোভাবে বুঝতে পেরেছে, এটা অন্যদের মধ্যে অতটা দেখা যায় না। তার একটা প্রধান কারণ আমার আরেকটা থিওরিটিক্যাল মেজারমেন্টের উপর নির্ভরশীল। সেটা হলো এই যে আমি মনে করি আমাদের যারা বড় সাহিত্যিক তারা এত বেশি পশ্চিম নির্ভর, তারা এত বেশি অ্যাস্থেটিক্যালি ডিপেন্ডেন্ট, তারা ফিলসফিক্যালি পলিটিক্যালি এত বেশি ডিপেন্ডেন্ট যে তারা সাদা চোখে খালি চোখে চারপাশের বাস্তবের দিকে তাকাতে আসলে বেশিরভাগ ক্ষেত্রে পারেননি। তারা বড় লেখক, কিন্তু তাদের লেখার মধ্যে এই খামতি আছে। আমি দেখানোর চেষ্টা করেছি যে হুমায়ুন এই কোনো প্রকার থিওরিটিক্যাল বায়াস ব্যতীত একেবারে সাদা চোখে চারপাশের জীবন বাস্তবতা বিশেষভাবে মধ্যবিত্তকে দেখতে পেরেছেন। ওই দেখতে পারাটা আমাদের জন্য খুবই লাভজনক হয়েছে, তার কারণ এর মধ্য দিয়ে আসলে আমরা বাংলাদেশের আরবান মিডল ক্লাস সাইকিতে খুব দ্রুত ঢোকার অন্তত একটা পদ্ধতি পেতে পারি। আমি এই ধরনের প্রায় আমার নিজের কতগুলো ব্যাপার প্রপাগেট করার জন্য এবং লাভজনক হবে এই ভেবেই আসলে হুমায়ুন আহমেদ নিয়ে দীর্ঘদিন লিপ্ত ছিলাম এবং একটা বই প্রকাশ করেছি। ধন্যবাদ।
Okay. So thank you so much, everyone. Basically, so I mean, হিমু কেনা পড়ছে, তাই না? সো এখানেই শেষ হবে। হিমু কেনা পড়ছে এবং হিরো আলমকে কেনা চিনে। সে সেটা হচ্ছে জার্নি ফ্রম হিমু টু হিরো আলম। অ্যান্ড যে হিরো আলমের ইন্টারভিউ হয়তো বা বিবিসি 5 মিনিট ধরে নেয়, বাট আমারটা নেয় না। হিরো আলমের গুরুত্ব আছে সমাজে, আসলে কিভাবে আছে আমাদের ভাবতে হবে। সো পোস্টমডার্ন মানি খারাপ, পোস্টমডার্ন মানি খ্যাওস, দ্যাটস দ্য I crap and bullshit thing I would rather say. But rather, as Shamim Bhai was uttering a word, lamenting. Postmodern doesn't, lamenting in a modern sense, but postmodern doesn't lament, it celebrates. But it doesn't celebrate everything. It depends on subjectivity. So it gives a space to every subject to exert his or her opinion. This depends on me whether I accept it or not. That's the thing. So subjectivity gets the freedom over here. So that's what we need to celebrate maybe. But how much we will celebrate, that's the question. That's the pioneer question. Truth and post-truth. And in between that, there are a lot of great things. How much we will take, that's up to me. So this is the world of up to me.
So I'm Muhammad Zaidul Islam. I'm a senior lecturer here, and I'm going to read Professor Kaiser Hock's biography. Now, what I'm going to read are just facts about Kaiser Hock, of course, and these do not entirely reflect Professor Kaiser Hock's influence and contribution to English learning and English teaching in Bangladesh. Kaiser Hamidul Hock, popularly known as Kaiser Hock, is a poet, essayist, and translator. He's a veteran of the Bangladesh War of Independence of 1971. He is currently a professor of English at the University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh, where he's also the director of Dhaka Translation Center. Earlier, he completed his tenure as a professor in the Department of English, University of Dhaka. He taught there from 1975 to 2016. Born in Dhaka, Professor Hock completed his early educations in Don's Kindergartens, St. Gregory's High School, Fozderhat Cadet College, and then later on in Dhaka Government College. He earned his BA Honours and MA in English Literature from the University of Dhaka. Later, he went on to study in Warwick University, from where he earned his PhD as a Commonwealth Scholar. He was also a senior Fulbright Scholar and Wheeler's Fellow at the University of Wisconsin. He was also a Royal Literary Fund Fellow at SOAS University of London. During summer 2003, he was the resident poet at the Poetry Cafe of the Poetry Society of Great Britain. He was on the panel of judges for the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for 3 years. Kaiser Hock has written many poems and essays. Besides, he has translated a large volume of writings. He has published a collection of poems in his book published in the Streets of Dhaka and Paraya and other poems. Besides, his translations include Rabindranath Tagore's Quartet, selected poems of Shamsur Rahman, The Wonders of Vilayat, and The Woman Who Flew. He has also translated Monosha Mongol as the triumph of the snake goddess as well. Professor Hawk has received the Bangla Academy Literary Award for translations and the Sherwin W. Howard Poetry Award for 2017. As a poet and translator, he has had the pleasure of seeing his works included in the curricula of schools and universities in home and abroad. Please welcome Kaiser Hawk.
Now, this conference is on very weighty themes: modernism, postmodernism, and beyond. So it covers everything. I'll just say a few words about this theme before moving on to two of my own poems. I was asked to talk about two of my poems, one of which is being taught here, I believe, the Ode on the Lungi. That was by popular demand. I think the students are interested in hearing about Ode on the Lungi, right? Okay, I will try not to disappoint you. And the other poem is my latest long poem, The New Frontier, which is about climate change. Now, both the poems are related to the theme of this conference: modernism, postmodernism, and beyond. You see, think of the history of English studies. It is not a very old discipline. It became an academic discipline in England in the 20th century. In the 19th century, there were some extramural courses, short courses given to workmen's institutions, but English literature was not an academic discipline. In the early 20th century, it became one. A professor of English was appointed at Oxford and then at Cambridge. But even then, it was not a robust discipline. It was considered to be the poor man's classics. After the First World War, something happened. And English became a very important discipline within academia. Modernism had a role there, you see. The English studies which developed after the First World War was heavily influenced by T.S. Eliot's essays. So tradition and the individual talent, and in general, Eliot's ideas about impersonality and all that. They influenced I.A. Richards, who was a big shot at Cambridge, and also later on Leavis, F.R. Leavis. So in other words, the study of English literature as a major academic discipline is intimately related to the rise of modernism. You see? Now, what is modernism? You will find weighty tomes discussing it. I simplify things. Okay. To me, modernism has two important aspects. One is its historiography, and the other is its emphasis on experimentation. The historiography is apocalyptic. There was a tremendous sense, an overwhelming sense of crisis in Western literature. And modernism was a response to that. In a state of crisis, the old and tried ways of creating art and literature cannot be used because the situation is very different. So you have to experiment. So this philosophy of history, the apocalyptic philosophy of history, and the emphasis on experiment, make it new, as Pound put it, you see, they go together. Okay. So it is under the impact of modernism that the English studies became an important discipline. It was seen as a way to deal with the crisis in civilization. You see, literature could teach us to be better equipped to deal with the crisis. Now, this, of course, could not last long, you see. And in the 1960s, from the 1960s onwards, we enter the era of postmodernism, you see, where the assumptions of modernism were questioned, and there was a tremendous awakening which had diverse manifestations. It had to do with the rejection of the materialism of the 1950s, the rise of the Beat generation and the hippies, the urge to opt out of society. In other words, the mainstream values of society were no longer seen to be viable, or desirable rather. And a new spurt of experimentation developed. You see. In the history of the arts, the 1920s and the 1960s are the two great decades in recent times. These two decades, the 60s and the 20s, are conspicuous for the creative efflorescence and the range of experimentation that emerged. You see? In the 60s, postmodern fiction became a big thing, you see. Metafiction, fabulation, all these things came up. And these are based on the insight that whatever we create does not have any absolute foundation, you see. We create our own foundation and build on it, you see. Now, even that did not last long, because there were other questions which came up. And these are all related to literature and the arts. The process of decolonization, or rather decolonizing the mind, led to the rise of post-colonial theory. The women's movement led to the rise of gender theory and women's studies. Then, by that time, the ecological crisis, which was then noticeable, engendered the rise of eco-criticism and writings dealing with the ecological problems, you see. And these trends have developed further until we are today faced with a dire situation, you see. On the one hand, we have the likelihood of an eco-apocalypse. On the other hand, we are faced with a global situation where geopolitics has taken a very nasty turn. We are now in a situation where people are seriously thinking of the possibility of a nuclear holocaust, you see. In fact, during the Cold War, people did not have this fear. There were anti-atom bomb marches, anti-nuclear marches, but there was never this level of fear, you see. So we are actually living on the edge. So this is a state of crisis. Now, regarding the relationship between modernism and postmodernism, I would put it like this, in very simple words. Modernism is based on the idea that history is cyclical, apocalyptic. One cycle ends, another begins. And when a cycle ends, there is a state of crisis. Postmodernism is this realization that this neat pattern does not hold. In fact, we are always in a state of crisis. This sense of being always in a state of crisis is a postmodern condition. And in this condition, we have to find ways to cope, you see. And in other words, well, we have to try to find ways to cope. I don't think we can really find definitive answers to the problems we face. But in other words, what I think our study of art and literature should sharpen our awareness of the crisis that the globe faces today, you see. The art and literature cannot provide solutions, but they can help us realize how terrible the situation is. Okay. Now, the two poems that you want me to talk about are related to this sketch that I have given you. Because as far as art and literature are concerned, these movements, modernism, postmodernism, and subsequent ones, they have to be faced, dealt with. One has to come to terms with them. One can go back further and say that we are, in a sense, post-romantics. You see? Romanticism was the first time this sense of crisis appeared. That was the age of revolutions, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, you see. And the Romanticism introduced trends and movements which have developed further and become aspects of modernism and postmodernism, you see. To give a simple example, think of Coleridge and Kubla Khan, his brilliant presentation of the unconscious drives and all that, or in The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Pushed to an extreme, this trend becomes surrealism, you see. So trends which began with Romanticism have evolved further and become aspects of modernism, postmodernism, even eco-criticism, even women's studies or post-colonialism, etc. You see. Now, when I began writing, and I would say the situation is still the same. The great modern writers, the modernists, had to be studied, and they still have to be studied. So one has to begin there, and then move on to the writers and poets who followed. So to me, Eliot is still my favorite poet. But I cannot follow Eliot, just as Philip Larkin could not follow Eliot. And in one respect, I share Larkin's stand. Larkin said, we are not interested in the myth kitty. Eliot was heavily dependent on the myth kitty, the body of myths and legends which provided the ideational framework that his poetry related to. But by the time we come to contemporary poetry, post-World War II poetry in Larkin and others, one cannot mythologize, one cannot be mythopoetic any longer, you see. The world has to be seen in its everyday light, okay. The age of the hero is gone, the ordinary chap comes to center stage. The language is the language of everyday life. When we rebel in the demotic language of the streets. Hence, you have beat poetry, you see. This another big influence on me. I remember as a student in high school, class 10, I think, I read a review reprinted from some British paper, I think The Guardian, in the Observer of Dhaka. There I came across a couple of lines from Larkin. Hatless, I take off my cycle clips in awkward reverence. And I was bowled over. You see, it seemed to be as significant as the opening lines of Prufrock, like a patient etherized upon a table. At about the same time, I came across the Penguin anthology, New American Writing, and read Allen Ginsberg. Very Vatic, bardic, and full-throated in his satire and his condemnation of the state of the world at that time, you see. Now, the Ode on the Lungi, which you are interested in, is a late beat poem. I would say it's a neo-beat generation poem. The beat idiom still survives in many poets. In other words, the influence of the beat generation is still with us. And in retrospect, it seems to me that the main inspiration behind the poem, main intertextual connection with the poem, is with a poem by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Underwear. You see? Now, Google Lawrence Ferlinghetti Underwear, read the poem, and see if you can find some similarities in tone, in attitude between Underwear and Ode on the Lungi. You see? Underwear by Ferlinghetti, okay? Yeah. Now, Ode on the Lungi, until I wrote The New Frontier, was my longest poem. It is also quite a complex poem. I think it's more complex than Underwear. It has more intertextual links, references. And also, in its whimsical use of Walt Whitman, it is very different from Underwear, you see. Why and how Walt Whitman entered the poem, I do not know. But it seemed to me, it seemed to come naturally, that in writing about the Lungi, I would place it in a global context. And in the context of world poetry, Walt Whitman as the laureate of democracy, you see, seemed to be an appropriate figure to draw into the poem. Then he is also from the most powerful nation in the world. He spoke of democracy and the equality of all things and beings. He was very vocal in his anti-slavery attitude. He took part in the American Civil War as a medic. He was also gay, which is something that comes across in his poetry, but could not be openly acknowledged in those days. And when he comes to Bangladesh, I make a snide reference to that as well. Okay. Now, Walt Whitman, I just dub Grandpa. How? Why? He is the grandfather of the contemporary poets. You see? If the great modernists, Eliot and Pound and others, are the fathers, you know, then Walt Whitman is the grandfather. He pioneered free verse. He is the first great poet who wrote exclusively in free verse. And as you know, most of contemporary poetry is in free verse. Okay. So he is, in that sense, a grandfather figure. He wrote a poem titled Passage to India. Forster took this title from him for his novel. It was originally Walt Whitman's title. What is Passage to India about? It is about the West reaching out to the East, absorbing the lessons of the East, and trying to go beyond. Remember, Whitman was a product of the so-called American Renaissance. And the American Renaissance, which was, whose stalwarts were Thoreau and what's his name? The great essayist Emerson, Thoreau. They, in the American Renaissance, the idea was that they would be open to all the great idealistic philosophers of the world. And so they studied Persian literature, Indian literature, you see. And this was part of a broad trend of Orientalization. We talk about Orientalism as the West trying to shackle us intellectually, you see. There was also a counter movement. There were influences from the East which were absorbed by the West, you see. In the European context, this has been studied in Raymond Schwab's Oriental Renaissance, on which Edward Said has a marvelous essay where he praises this book. His essay was then used as the introduction to the English translation. So from Goethe onwards, from Emerson and others onwards, so they were absorbing a lot of things from the East. Whitman was a disciple of these thinkers, Emerson and Thoreau. And in Passage to India, he embarks on an imaginative journey to the East. And he says passage to India and passage to more than India. In other words, the human spirit cannot halt at any point. It has to keep pushing further, hence the beyond. We love the word beyond. Bread and beyond. Everything and beyond, you see. You know, human beings are always trying to reach further and further, and that we cannot stop. Okay. So, Whitman therefore comes into the poem. And I bring him into Bangladesh. He says, passage to more than India. I give that a literal interpretation. More than India means beyond India. Beyond India is Bangladesh. So he has to come to Bangladesh. And once he's in Bangladesh, I start engaging him in a dialogue about sartorial equality. You see? And how far we are from this democratic ideal. So, even though we accept the idea of equality, in real life we do not practice it. So, the lungi is looked down upon. It is not allowed, people in lungis are not allowed into certain places. Recently, someone was not sold a cinema ticket because he went in a lungi. And there was a marvelous article in the Business Standard. I don't know if any of you read it. There's an article in the Business Standard by an NSU graduate. Okay. And she began by referring to my poem. So, Ode on the Lungi has become a kind of, manifesto, you can say. It's a manifesto for the cause of sartorial equality. Okay. Now, even Walt Whitman would not be allowed into the White House if he went in a lungi. You see? Now, So I declare myself to be a lungi activist. And look forward to the day when the UN chief will wear a lungi and address the world. There are echoes of lines from Whitman and also other poets like Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat. Grandpa Walt, I celebrate my lungi and sing my lungi. And what I wear, you shall wear. It's time you finally made your passage to more than India, to Bangladesh. And lounging in a lungi in a cottage on Cox's Bazar beach, the longest in the world, we proudly claim, watched 28 young men in lungis bathing in the sea. This is an allusion to a line in Whitman where he presents a young lady who is ogling 28 young men bathing in the sea. That young lady is actually Whitman himself. But you see, because he could not admit that he was gay, he presents himself as a young lady ogling the men. So I say, you can come here and watch the 28 young men bathing in the sea. But what is this thing, my learned friends, I'm alluding to Beau Brummel? Now, this is, I think, the most obscure allusion in the poem. Beau Brummel was a Regency buck, you see, one of the smart young men of the Regency in the early 19th century, before the Victorian age. He was a dandy. He is credited with having invented the tie. You see, he used to, tie his cravat in a way which then became the modern tie. And once he went to a party where there was an aristocrat, a lord somebody, who went in an overcoat that was not very smart. So when that lord took off his coat and gave it to the butler, he said, "Here, take my coat." Brummel was there. He said, "Do you call that thing a coat?" You see? Now, this is typical English wit, you see? To reduce an overcoat to a thing. You see, do you call that thing a coat? Now, what is this thing that we call a lungi? And I give a very scientific description. A rectangular cloth, white, colored, check, or plaid, roughly 45 by 80 inches, halved lengthwise and stitched to make a tube you can get into and fasten in a slip knot around the waist. One size fits all. And should you pick up dirt, say on your seat, you can simply turn it inside out. The hem serves as napkin to wipe the hands, or mouth after a rinse, taking a deep bow to bring lips to raised lungi edge. Only ensure it's not raised too high, especially if you aren't wearing underwear. When you are out of it, the lungi can be folded up like a scarf or converted into a carrying bag for groceries and things. Worn out, it has its uses as dish rag or floor wipe or material for a katha quilt. Or you can let your imagination play with the textile tube to illustrate the superstrings of the theory of everything. Vide the book of this title by the Venerable Stephen Hawking. This is another obscure illusion. Now, I don't know if you know about the theory of everything, but all the theoretical physicists of the world are looking for the theory of everything, which will provide equations to explain all the different forces, gravity, the quantum forces, the weak nuclear forces and the strong nuclear forces and all that. So all the forces can be explained by the same set of equations. That will mean that we have understood the universe completely. But the problem is that it is not yet possible to prove that a theory of everything is valid. Stephen Hawking supported the string theory. String theory is a theory of everything that works mathematically, but there is no way to verify it experimentally. According to string theory, the ultimate building blocks of the universe are little tubes that exist in 10 dimensions. 4 dimensions have opened, the 3 dimensions of space and time. The other 6 dimensions are still curled up, like the petals which haven't opened, you see. And the mathematics works, but we don't know if it is really valid, you see. So you can think of the lungi as a tube, a superstring, and use it to illustrate that theory of everything. Okay. But coming back to basics, in other words, these are just flights of fancy. The lungi is an elaborate fig leaf, the foundation of propriety in ordinary mortals. And you can just live with a couple of lungis in this climate. You see? You can wear one, go into the pond, wear another one, come out, and dry that one. In winter, you can wear one here and another one over here, like an improvised poncho. You see? You can wear it as a G-string, you see, and wrestle or play kabaddi. Or you can wear it like a kilt, you can half kore, you can tie it, and then play football or cricket. You see? So it's a complete wardrobe. The lungi is a complete wardrobe. It is an emblem of egalitarianism. It is the symbol of global left-outs, those who are marginalized. You see? Raised and flapped amidst laughter, it's a subaltern speaking. This line comes from scenes I used to witness when going on a train ride. I don't know if you have had this experience. When you go in a train, when you cross the countryside, you will see village boys who are playing in the field. When they see the train going, they will come and that is a subaltern speaking, which is, of course, an allusion to Gayatri Spivak's essay, Can the Subaltern Speak? Well, the subalterns can speak. They can show their thing. And then there are some naughty lines, which I will not read out. There's a parody of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a book of smutty jokes, a bottle of hooch, and your beloved inside your lungi. There's paradise for you. And then, if your luck runs out and the monsoon turns into a biblical deluge, just get in the water and hand pump water to balloon up your lungi. Now your humble ark. I don't know if you have seen this. You can get into the water and pump, and the lungi floats. And you can float in the water with that. You see? So it is your ark. It can save you if there's a deluge. And finally, when you find shelter, you can find a treetop. You can rinse it and hold it aloft flag of your indisposition. In Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, he says that the grass is the flag of my disposition. Here, the lungi becomes the flag of your indisposition, and wave it at the useless stars. The stars are supposed to control our fate, but they are useless now. They are no good. They cannot help us. So, it is post-colonial. It is beat generation. It follows the beat generation in its idiom, in its irreverence. It also is very modern in its use of literary allusions. Okay. So, any questions about it?
We were talking about how the Lungi poem, and I teach it and I love it, and it's widely popular, as I think you can understand, as we can see here. The fact that it has become a sort of manifesto for sartorial equality. And as we know that as women in this century that we're living in, nothing is more hotly contested and debated more than a woman's clothes. So in this conversation about sartorial equality, about the lungi, how do we fit the women? How can I use this poem to adequately address the wrongs that are done in the name of appropriateness when it comes to women's clothes? How can I marry those two concepts together?
In the case of women's attire, it's not a simple question of wearing one thing or another. All kinds of complexities creep in. People talk about the way she is wearing her sari, you see, you know? And there, I mean, it cannot be addressed in a poem. Only aspects of it can be dealt with, but not in a poem of this sort. Now, the problem with women's attire is very, very serious. And it is there in every culture. It was there in Victorian England, you see. And even today, even in the Western context, you have some problems.
Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, calling the women letterboxes who are wearing hijabs. Would you care to comment on that, first of all? And the second question is, of course, about Manusha Mongol and the New Frontier. In New Frontier as well, you're saying the Arctic is the new frontier. And also we see the image of, in my lungi, of course, it's repeated. But it's about climate change. How do you say the US is trying to mine the Greenland, and of course we see, they're lending money to the developing countries to tackle climate change and all that. So, Sharpohiran Dhongshon Koro, Ujauya Jharo type, ekta byapar amra dekhte pacchi. But in Bangladesh, why do we not see novels and poems as such dealing with climate change and all that? Why is that?
A few years back, it suddenly struck me that global warming is making huge areas of the world economically exploitable. You see? So here we are being threatened, we are going underwater, but there are other parts of the world where cultivation will become possible because of global warming, where the economic exploitation of certain key resources will become possible. It struck me that Siberia is now, warming up. The permafrost has melted. So very soon it'll be possible to plow the land. And I used to tell my friends, well, the Bangladesh government should negotiate with Russia because they'll need manpower. So we have plenty of people who can go and work the land there. You see. Now, but we are actually going to face serious problems along the coast. Already, I was told by somebody that NGO workers have found out that in the coastal areas where there is increasing salinity, there are more miscarriages now, because the expectant mothers are taking in more salt because of salinity, and that raises blood pressure and leads to miscarriage. You see? So it really sort of bowled me over. I mean, just think of this. one thing leads to another thing into another thing.
We are going through in postmodern era in terms of hyperreality, hybridity.
Thank you.
But one thing, that is my question, that in postmodern era, in terms of dress code that we are appreciated to follow, especially for men, for boys in offices, in terms of symposium, in terms of lecture, the dress code appreciated like shirt, pant, and blazer in a hot country like Bangladesh. Isn't it like that we are going through the new colonial trend? We are still colonized. Are we not still colonized? You said, sir, that lungi is appreciated as the formal dress in Sri Lanka and Burma. So what is our trend going on, sir?
You will notice that it's only in the corporate world that the suit is considered to be official wear, because they spend all their time working hours in the in air-conditioned spaces. So ওখানে ঠিকই আছে। এখন রাস্তায় এই ভর দুপুরে কেউ কি স্যুট পরে যাবে নাকি? I don't think so. And regarding, actually I can see the problem that you consider it to be westernization. But then the Chinese also wear these suits nowadays. So it has become global. It's a question of custom, konta accepted here. And that is also changing slowly. I don't know if you have noticed, but the use of the tie is going down. Nowadays, in formal situations, you will see people without a tie. খবর পড়ছে, টিভিতে ইয়ে করছে, স্টেট ফাংশনে টাই ছাড়া জাস্ট জ্যাকেট পরে আছে। তারপরে ওয়ারিং এ স্যুট উইদাউট এ টাই, এটাও আসছে কিন্তু। সো দিস থিংস আর চেঞ্জিং। আর এই স্যুট পরে তো ইউ উইল নট ওয়ার এ উলেন স্যুট ইন দিস country in summer. But if you go into an air-conditioned office, in fact, a light jacket is a good idea, because otherwise you might catch a cold. And then at the same time, I believe in pluralism. So there should be a range of choices available to everyone. If I want to wear, casual clothes to work, it should be fine. আর এই কোন পোশাক পরবে এটা তো এর ব্যাপার, কনভেনশনের ব্যাপার। স্কুলে ইউনিফর্ম কেন পড়তে হয়? কনভেনশন। In this school, you wear this uniform. In the army, you wear this uniform to do this thing. So it's a question of sartorial conventions. So those conventions should always be, should always undergo revision. And I think that slowly these changes are taking place.